Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So, this is a long video. I covered Joe Rogan's interview with Donald J. Trump, which is very telling. Trump is clearly deteriorating, but he says a few things about nuclear war, and that's like the real thing to fear, and Israel could be erased with one atomic bomb, like a whole thing, right? Which I'll get into. I'll play you some clips from it. And so, I'm also going to cover Kamala and some of her a little bit less this time. The video is mostly about Trump on Rogan, but very telling about Trump basically lets it slip a few times that neither he or Kamala or anybody else can fix the system, and I'll get into that as we go through it. But today, I made most of the video yesterday. Today's Tuesday, October 29th. So I wanted to show you this. This is ties into all that. This happened yesterday.
The skies over Tehran lit up with anti-aircraft fire as Iranian forces tried to hold off Israel's strikes. The long-awaited attack carried out by Israeli Air Force fighter jets operating nearly 1,000 miles from home, striking in retaliation for this ballistic missile attack by
Here's where they hit.
Bases in Tehran and 2 other provinces were hit, and says 4 of its soldiers were killed.
So it wasn't some huge thing, but this is the first time Israel struck inside of Iran itself. So it's an escalation, right? The Iranians are denying it, saying it wasn't a big deal, like whatever. But we're getting closer and closer to World War III. So I turned on the news today. I'm not going to show you the clip, but Morning Joe, I have it recorded on YouTube TV. So I went to the beginning hoping or thinking they were going to cover this move towards World War III. But apparently Trump had said that we're close to World War II. And then his audience sort of corrected him and he made a joke about it. And Mika and the Morning Joe squad were talking about how bad Trump is and how, the October surprise is all of his failures and gaffes that are happening right now. And I'm like, after all the stuff that Joe Biden did and they covered up for, all of his Parkinson. But they didn't think it was worthy to cover this escalation to World War III because election day, the election's just so close. But this isn't good, right? It's, maybe better than it could have been, but it's advancing this whole idea of, the, end of civilization as we now know it. All right, without further ado, let's get into Trump Rogan stuff here. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I got a lot of stuff to show you. First of all, with the Trump and the Joe Rogan interview. Well, again, the whole shadow banning thing, and remember to like the videos. Most important thing, I think. I don't know, for the algorithms, and comment. It could be just an emoji, and or subscribe, resubscribe. All those things you do. There is a membership program, and all the other stuff. So, Joe Rogan interview with Trump was very telling and very interesting. And my wife and I listened to it yesterday. Today is Monday, October 28th. This video will be up on Wednesday. We were in the car for a while, so we listened to it. And I didn't think I'd listen to the whole thing. It wasn't compelling or a good interview, but it was interesting. And Trump is definitely deteriorated. So I should say this, first of all. This election is... there's nothing to it. Like, there's no outcome here that's going to change anything, right? Like, there's going to be differences if Trump is elected again or Kamala Harris is elected in America. There's going to be some differences, in the sense whether you get diagnosed with cancer or a heart disease, right? Whether you're going to have a stroke, or you're going to get diabetes, or you're going to, like America is a country. The terminal state is there, right? America's going down, and I'll explain more about this, like I always talk about it, which I think most people have a sense of it. It's just going to be how, right? The how is going to be different. Everything else is going to be the same. You have the where, the what, the why, right? In any story, the where, the what, the why. I covered this in I believe in my, maybe when I wrote this workbook about transforming abuse and things years ago. And, I think it's kind of good, but it could be, I'd have to rewrite it. But I talked about the where, the why, the how, like when you're in any situation. This is a kind of a counseling, self-help kind of thing. And then you figure out where the problem is, right? Like, is it in the how? Is it the method, right? Is it the why? Is it the motivation? Is it the what? Is it the thing, right? Is it the, whatever you're doing, right? There's these various elements to anything. Like, there's going to be, you're sort of figuring out where the problem is, or where the is it because of the intentionality and the why and what you're doing and why you're doing it and your motivation and things like that, right? Is it the what? Is it the person you're in the relationship you're in? Is it the business you're in, like the type of business? Is it gambling or drug use or whatever? So the what could be, some whats are doomed, like war, like it's war is always sucky, right? So all these things, and so the how is how America collapses, and that might change a little bit in terms of Kamala and Trump, right? And the how of World War III, like it might. There's always a story of something that's the catalyst for war, but the outcome is predetermined, right? There's no avoiding something. There's no avoiding your death, for example, but how you die, what you die from, right? And why you die. I mean, the why is always because you have to, right? But it also could be because you smoke cigarettes your whole life, right? The why can be two things, or it can be multiple things. But in terms of what's going to happen here after the election, it's the same. Like it's just going to be, a new story or a different variation of the same story. But I can say because it is happening that the election is intense, right? The election, whatever's happening now with the election, is really intense. I don't know how you guys are feeling about it. I do this meditation, Sajmark meditation, and many of you guys know that there was a, wonderful organization, at least for me it was, and it was transformative, and the services were free, and the organization was just pristine, and the master of the system was just a service-based person, an impeccable character, and just a great person. And the successor is like a real POS, right? Just a horrible person. Criminal stuff and, just bad decisions and stupid. But because he was legitimately nominated by the previous guy and through some, these channeled messages by the previous, the second master of the system, right? He was endorsed at every level, and he's the official, it's a, like there's the material aspect of it. It is a organization that has, it's registered in various countries around the world, many countries around the world. And it's an organization where he is the legitimate legal person in charge of it, right? And so the organization has folded, and it's been, difficult for me to go through. And the current master system, Dodgy, which is DAAJI, but of course dodgy with the way people say it in England, that this is dodgy, this is like fucking criminal or scummy or whatever, right? He ran pharmacies. He had 7 pharmacies in New York City. And his son, he turned the business over to his son, and they started this thing called Medley Pharmacy, which was an online pharmacy that was apparently flourishing in COVID times, like during the lockdown, because they were bringing pharmaceuticals to people's homes, right? Which was a big deal. And the business, I don't know what it went public or whatever happened, but they got a lot of investor money. And I thought it was originally $120 million, but it turns out to be $217 million. And I know that because the SEC, the Service Exchange, the institution in charge of financial fraud crimes, has charged Dodgy's son and 2 co-conspirators with inflating the value of the company and it's pretty bad. I was just reading the whole thing like a couple of days ago, and it has to do with this organization, and there's ties to India, and there's a whole thing there. So I'm going to cover this extensively in my journey series. I have a couple of journey series that are up. I just haven't made them public, and then I'll whatever this number of this one is, but I'm going to put it on my backup channel as well. Like I'll cover that probably later today or tomorrow. I don't know, whenever I get done with this video. But it's like a lot of things, and I'm bringing it up because it just seems like a lot of things are coming to the head. Like it's the election is part of that, and the North Korea is now involved in the Ukrainian war, and things are getting closer and closer to World War III, right? And not just that, but it's all of it, right? So I have a number of clips I have gonna pull because when my wife and I were listening to the interview, my wife was driving. I just took screenshots so I could find them. It's a 3-hour thing. And I guess the only good thing I could say about Trump, and this isn't like why anybody should vote for him or why I would vote for him, is that I couldn't listen to a 3-hour conversation with Joe Rogan and Kamala because she's just, repulsive, right? She repels people. She repels, at least for me, a lot of people. And I don't know how long I could listen to more of Joe Biden because his gaffes are entertaining. But again, I can't listen to any politician that just sticks to their script and tries to stick to their script, right? And I will say that Trump is, a little bit entertaining. There's things that he does that entertain. My wife and I were cracking up, but we're also, making fun of him a lot because he is showing his senility. And so there's a few things I wanted to point out here in the voiceover that I'll show you some of the, clips and talk more about the whole interview with Joe Rogan. But Trump repeated himself, repeated a lot of the same talking points and stories, and he was all over the place. And he couldn't answer the questions, right? The 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan and RFK Jr., RFK Jr. was able to answer and talk about things in a nuanced way, in a way that at least you could see that you can understand how he, did things and went about things. You can understand how his mental process worked. It was a much better interview in terms of his performance, right? And, I've heard interviews with people that where people who can answer the questions. You ask them a question and they give a relevant answer, and Trump couldn't do that. He was all over the place. And he bragged. And I'm going to show you something with Kamala Harris. Well, let me read that first, and then I'll talk about Trump. And so this is on my phone. So let me pull it up here. I'm going to find it. I took screenshots of it. So there's some way on YouTube to send out like messages to your subscribers, right? And so Kamala Harris said this. When I was in high school, I started to notice something about my best friend Wanda. Like, this is a fucking message she sends out to people, right? When I was in high school, like, she's running for an election, and she's as inauthentic a person as you could be. And part of that is she wasn't inauthentic when she ran for president in 2019 and 2020. But when she was authentic, people did want to vote for her. And so the Democratic Party is completely fucked. And not the Republican Party is better because they're just as fucked in a different way. But they are making decisions that, like, I talked about this some time ago. I chose not to charge my, my hair clippers and my, I used to shave, right? And, and I said, I realized that I was screwing, Tuesday Paul was screwing Thursday Paul, right? Like how sometimes you make a decision where you're kicking a problem down the road, where a future version of yourself, because you're going to be a different person in 2 days. Like, I'm a different person than I was, 6 months ago, right? Like you just change, and some future version of yourself is going to pay or benefit from your choices right now. And this is something people don't understand about spirituality. that the choices you make right now are going to be, they're going to affect what happens to you in the future, right? And so the Democratic Party decided to, cover up for and push out a guy, Joe Rogan. I mean, Joe Biden. That was, that's my age, right? That, wasn't there, right? Like there wasn't, he was mentally gone. And he couldn't sustain a presidency. And then they made it even worse by nominating Kamala Harris as his successor. So their backup plan was probably as bad or worse than their, plan B was as bad as worse or plan A. And so they had this person that, when she is herself, nobody likes her. And I'll show you a bunch of clips, and we know, because you guys already know, but I'll just, validate this later. So she says, when I was in high school, I started to notice something about my best friend, Wanda. She was sad at school, and there were times when she didn't want to go home. So this is the girl that she talked about suffering from abuse. I'm going to read the part here. And she's exploiting the shit out of their relationship for personal, narcissistic, braggadocious situation here. It's so, like, gross, right? And it's so remedial. Like, who could this appeal to? One day I asked Wanda if everything was all right. And she confided in me that she was being sexually abused by her stepfather. I immediately told her she had to come to live with us. I called my mother, and my mother said, "Of course she does." And that doesn't even make sense. Of course she does? Like, why? It should say, of course she should. Or whatever it was. Of course she can. Not of course she does. Of course she does? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it's not even a right, sentence structure. But the fact that she's exploiting this story, and so Wanda did. Wanda's story is one of the reasons I wanted to become a prosecutor. And this is, they rolled this story out during her. This is them trying to create a person that Kamala Harris isn't, right? Because the reason she wanted to become a prosecutor and a lawyer is because, for Kamala Harris. It wasn't because she wanted to prosecute people like this, right? These types of bad people. Because, we know what she did with it. Like, she locked up parents whose kids were being truanted from school. Some of those parents are like this one woman, this African-American woman whose daughter had sickle cell anemia or something. And she, in the commercial for Trump, she explains how, like, she got, made the situation much worse because her daughter was in extreme pain and missing school for a valid reason. And Kamala Harris, made these mistakes, right? As a courtroom prosecutor, I felt a deep sense of responsibility to take on crimes and harms against women and children. And when I had a case, I charged it not in the name of the victim, but in the name of the people for one reason. In our system of justice, a harm against any one of us is a harm against all. Through decades of my law enforcement, I never asked a victim or witness, are you a Republican or Democrat? Why the fuck would anybody do this? She had an ad that I said the very same thing to. Why would you ask you're a victim whether you're a Democrat or Republican? I mean, were you that much of a politician back then? Because you're a prosecuting lawyer. You never asked that. Who would ask that? What district attorney or what prosecuting lawyer would go and say, "Hey, I know you're a victim, but are you a Democrat or Republican? Because I'm not going to try as hard." Like, she wants to get a conviction because it looks good for her, and she's narcissistic. And so why would she even say that? Like, she keeps on saying that in ads. And people are like, oh my God, she didn't care whether she was a Republican or Democrat. Like this young lady that she's talking about, her friend, if this story's real or if the friend even exists, right? But to say, like, let's say a woman came in and she was being abused in this way. She just suffered, she just had been AR'd. Are you okay? No, I just got AR'd, right? Like, no, I'm not okay, right? Put this motherfucker in jail. Like, what are you talking about? And so she said, are you a Republican or Democrat? The only question I ever asked was, are you okay? That's the kind of president we deserve. Oh, you're the kind of president we deserve? And that's the kind of president I pledge to be. As president, I will fight to protect our fundamental freedoms and make sure everyone has a right to safety, dignity, and justice. And there's a picture of the two of them smiling back to back, in some like high school picture, right? And I think she said was her best friend since the age she was 5. And so I don't even know, like, because she was living in Canada at the time when she was in high school. It's a whole fucked up thing, right? But the bigger point is bragging. And Trump is like the biggest bragger. Like he always is coming out and, he's telling stories about Dana White. Of course, Joe Rogan said the reason Trump was there in the interview was because Dana White encouraged Rogan to interview Trump. Because Rogan obviously does not believe in Trump, right? But Trump is telling you all the time how great he is. And now Kamala Harris is doing the same thing. And that's not on them, right? Like the way that they brag, people who get it, like understand, anything about human nature, they know when somebody's bragging, they're covering up for something. Whenever you have to tell people how great you are, right, is because there's some kind of narcissistic wound there. It's something you're making up for something because, your internal voice is telling you you're a piece of shit. And you can't embrace that. Like your internal voice is telling you you're a bad person. And so you have to create this, this counter balance to it where you're telling everyone else, hey, I'm great, because deep down you feel like you're a piece of shit, right? In some cases, you even feel like you're evil. And you're trying to drown that voice out. But the American people are so clueless that they need people to tell them how great they are. And, this is carried over on social media, where people post things on social media to show everyone, hey, look at how great I am. Look at how beautiful I am. Look at how, taking hundreds of pictures and using filters and, going to places and not to enjoy the place, but to just show, oh, I'm living the best life and trying to rub it in everybody else's faces, on social media. And everybody creating these fake platforms and personas when they're depressed and miserable and all the other things, right? But the more important thing is that it's okay to embrace this idea that you're a piece of shit. Not like completely. Not in some way that you're whipping yourself, self-flagellating, or where they called it, like in that, the Da Vinci Code movie or book or whatever. I didn't read the book, but there's that one character named, I don't know, his name's Simon or something. And he's whipping himself. He's taking these whip and he's like, beating himself bloody because of some, Catholic guilt and shame and this whole, thing. Like, that's not good. It's not good to beat yourself up. But, I often tell this story. It's a Saj Mark story, the third master. The system told it all the time. And in India, they have this thing called the Guru Dakshina, where where if you as a disciple have to give some sort of a gift to the guru, and it shouldn't be money or something like that. Like it shouldn't be some kind of, it shouldn't be some financial, because that means that the guru's a piece of shit scam artist. It's like something abstract, right? And so this kid goes to this guru and says, I want to be your disciple. And he says, well, you have to give me a guru dakshina. And the kid says, sure. And he says, well, the guru says, bring me the worst thing in the world. And the kid goes out and sees like horrible things, one after another, and he can't find the worst thing. And so finally he's, going to the bathroom, he's pooping. And he looks at the poop and he goes, oh, you're the worst thing in the world. And so he goes to scoop it up and take it back to his guru, and the poop says, what are you doing? And he said, well, my guru wants me to take the worst thing back to him, and you're it. And the poop says, what do you mean I'm it? I was birthday cake and apple and, wonderful things before you touched me. Like, you're the one who turned me into this, right? You made me into this. Like, it's you. And so the kid goes back and says, I brought you the worst thing. And the guru says, what? He goes, it's me. Now, and I want to also preface this with this idea that there's also divinity within all of us. We have a soul. And when I worked with sex offenders, I worked with sex offenders, little kids in one treatment center, and then teenage sex offenders in another. And these were these were going to be the dregs of society. They are still young, and so you think, they might have a chance of changing. And some are worse than others, right? But, sex offenders are the population that prisoners don't want to. Prisoners beat the shit out of pedos in prison. Like and even in prison, they're the lowest of the low, right? Amongst thieves and criminals, they're considered the worst. But there are moments where these kids would show moments of empathy and like they would just have a higher nature. I would see a higher nature. And I saw it with, like, there's people I know who are saints, do the meditation. There's people I know that are just great people. And they would have their lower moments, right? They'd have their egotistical human moments. And you have an ego, which is, a piece of shit, selfish piece of shit part of you. It doesn't have to be, but it can go that way, a potential demon. And you have a soul, which is a potential saint. And, embracing the one and minimizing the other is what everyone has to do. And we're not doing that, of course, now. People are disconnected from their souls, right? But to understand this, that we all have thoughts, selfish thoughts, negative thoughts, hateful thoughts, feelings. We all have these dark parts of our personality, right? And never forgetting that. Like, you have to battle that. That's a part of human nature, a lower part, a selfish part, right? And you can never forget about that. And no matter what your accomplishments and how you brag, that shit don't go away, right? The third master of the Sajmark system, Master Charji, published his diaries. And even when he was in the highest levels of spiritual attainment, and he was going to be the successor to his guru, he wrote stuff down like all the time. I feel like the least spiritual person in the world. Like, he said this over and over again, things like that. I don't feel spiritual at all. I don't feel, I feel like, just basically a piece of shit. Because there are times you feel like that. Like, there are times you feel, there's that element. And there's a humility there where you always have to be working on yourself and improving. You always have to be confronting the dark side, the negative side, the selfish side, the egotistical side. And that's what makes a person a good person, a saintly person. And it also makes you compassionate to other people because you don't start saying, oh, I'm great, like Trump does and like Kamala does, and the other person's a piece of shit. And all the people that follow them are saying, we're great, we're the Republicans, we're the good guys, we're great, we're the Democrats, we're the good guys, and the other side is the bad guys. Because you forget that you're a piece of shit just as much as they are. Maybe some people are a little worse, some people are bracing their egos more, people have gone to the dark side. But, you're only a couple bad decisions away from being homeless. You're only a couple bad decisions away from your life crumbling and falling apart. You're only one bad medical diagnosis or condition away from being terminal and being on death's door. You have to look around all the time and see what's going on in the world and appreciate your situation compared to every other person or lots of other people. Because there are lots of people that you can think are having it better off than you, but it always can get worse, right? Fucking your life can always get fucking worse. But in that, the American people are so lost that they need somebody to brag to them constantly. Whether it's Kamala and her fucking weird message or Trump. Trump is always talking about he's the greatest and how he did it. And he does this throughout the Joe Rogan interview. And it's like he's a child. The first thing I want to say is he came off like a child. And not like a bad child, but like clueless, right? And so Joe Rogan like throws him a bone. And he says that he just watched The View when Trump first announced he was running for president. And he used to go on The View all the time. And he comes out, and Joy and Whoopi give him a hug, and they talk about how much they love him. Like, everybody there is loving the guy, and, they're just all over him, right? And he said, it's like surreal to go back and watch this, and he didn't want to show the episode because of copyright issues, and he didn't want the video to be taken down on YouTube. But he said, it's just surreal. And he said that everybody turned on you, Joe Rogan. And Trump's like, yeah, I don't know why. And I'm like, I know exactly why they turned on you. I mean, it's what I liked about Trump. He wasn't presidential, and he said shit you're not supposed to say. And Joe Rogan said, yeah, it's because you said crazy shit, right? That's when they turned on you. But the first thing was, right after he got elected, he was already pissing everybody off. He went after the intelligence agencies. And you know, Chuck Schumer, and I've showed you the clip before. Chuck Schumer went on Rachel Maddow, and he was gloating and saying, as soon as I saw him do that, I knew that the intelligence community, they have, you know, a million ways to, you know, to Sunday, whatever that, you know, 8 ways to Sunday to get back at you, whatever that saying is. And he said, like, they're not, you don't fuck with those guys. You don't talk shit about them because they got stuff on you. They're going to go after you. And that immediately happened. And Trump had to reverse himself. But the intelligence agencies went after him, and you know, just everything that was Trump, and the way he was, and the promises he was making, and they also resented him just being himself and not being presidential and not playing the game, right? But then Joe Rogan said, you know, what was it like when you stepped in the you know, the Oval Office and became president? And Trump goes on this rant about Abraham Lincoln's bedroom and his dead kid. And Joe Rogan's no, but like, what was it like for you to be president? Like coming in and, you know, like it must have been like surreal, whatever. And he said, you know, how did you appoint people? Like, what was your decision? And Trump says, which you'll hear here, you know, I got, you know, I bookmarked some of this stuff. But Trump says, you know, that he didn't really know what he was doing. Like he was a businessman, and then all of a sudden he had to learn how to be a politician, which I said all along. Like people want an outsider, but he said he couldn't hire other outsiders because they hadn't been vetted the way other politicians were. Like he couldn't hire business people and people outside the political arena because they hadn't been vetted. I'm like, you could have vetted them, right? But he said politicians are always been vetted, so when you hire them. But he was also saying that he trusted people he shouldn't, and he had to listen to people because he didn't know what the fuck he was doing, right? And so all this stuff about him being an outsider, he came in and he had to listen to the same old people and put the same old types of people in positions, and they all started to do what they do, and some of them are screwing him over. And he said, you know, there's like two kinds of governmental people. There are people who are just like stupid and incompetent, and then there was survivors. And he asked one guy, like I think he was talking about Mitch McConnell, to put some sort of controversial law into place, like to back a law that he wanted to go through the Congress, the Senate. And the guy thought about it. He said, "Oh, this is a great guy," and you know he was, you know, on my side. But he said no, and he, you know, and Trump realized that. He said no because this guy was a survivor. He'd been around forever, and he because he didn't do anything. He didn't, you know, push anything, even if it was a good thing, because they don't do anything controversial. They don't take any stands on anything. They just survive. And he said, I actually kind of appreciated it about the guy. Like maybe I would be doing the same thing if I was in his position, right? You know, he kept on saying things like that, like talking about things that, you know, he, like were bad things that other people are doing, like other leaders, and saying that he would do those things. But the other issue is that Trump just fucking blathers on incoherently. His thought process is definitely not working. And there's a time where he's talking about Joe Biden being senile, but he said it wasn't because of his age. He goes, there's like, I know guys who are 80 who they're even smarter now. I'm like, I go, you've even got smarter, and you don't. Trump's saying this in a self-serving way, right? But it's, you know, he isn't, he's not as sharp as he was, right? He retold a lot of the same stories, like I said. He said the same things over again, and he was blathering, right? And, you know, it's part of the reason he gets into trouble. There's two things here, because Trump is like, I realize things about Trump that I kind of knew, but I didn't know I knew, or I hadn't thought, you know, in some concrete way. But, you know, about his personality and who he is, you know, how he does things. And Trump just talks shit all the time, and he just rambles, and ideas come to him, and he doesn't mean any of it. Like, it's just like almost stream of consciousness, and he doesn't remember it either. And there are things that he says that these enemies, the Democrats and media, can use against him, and he does it all the time. And there, it fits into narratives they're trying to create for him, and he just says it because he just, you know, rambles on about everything. And he isn't very curious. Like, Trump is the kind of truther, remedial truther, who realizes the official story's false about some things, buys into the official story other times. But there's truthers like this. And the first explanation he hears about an alternative explanation is he just goes with it. And the difference is people think it's coming from a place of, inner circle knowledge, like of behind the curtain knowledge, right? This happened with Roseanne Barr. Before everyone knew Roseanne Barr was like crazy and like, and just goofy, and she hurt the truth community. Roseanne Barr came out and started to talk about MK Ultra and Hollywood celebrities being MK Ultra. And like everyone went nuts in the truth community because she was validating something. And we were all looking at it like this is a person who knows about Hollywood and knows about other celebrities. And she's validating this idea that they've been MK Ultra, right? But as Roseanne started to blather and, show who she was, it was very obvious that she had watched truther videos and she didn't have any inside knowledge of Hollywood celebrities being MK Ultra. And really kind of didn't even know what the fuck she was talking about, right? Like she just watched one video. And Trump is like that. Like Trump will hear one thing and doesn't try to validate it because he got into the whole thing with Ohio and the Haitians. And he was making up stuff that I know, at least in terms of the most reasonable story isn't true, right? And that eating cat story had already been debunked by the woman who started it. Like it was, her neighbor lost her cat. And, this woman was prejudiced against these immigrants that were there for a reason because it was a dying city, right? That Ohio, whatever, was Springfield, Ohio. And was it Springfield? I don't know. Who cares? And so and nobody does care. It's just a story that went viral. And Trump went with a story that they didn't try to validate. Like Trump doesn't fact check anything. It's hard to fact check things because everything's full of disinformation and bullshit. But Trump hears something and he just says it. And people who follow him think it's coming from a place of knowledge, but oftentimes it's an echo chamber of things he's hearing from his fans and, QB people and, whatever. He hears something. It's not coming from a place of knowledge of the government or some, internal investigation. And Trump just goes with it without, vetting it or, all these things. And you could see it because there's a moment where they're talking about, Trump has this thing he talks about, there's a switch somewhere that they can stop the flow of fresh water going into the Pacific Ocean in Oregon or someplace like that. And the water would flow down to California that has major water issues, right? And Joe Rogan said there used to be a monster lake in the middle of California, and it's dry now. And Trump have never heard about the lake. He's just hearing it from Joe Rogan. He's like, oh, wow, is that so? Wow, that's interesting. And so Joe Rogan said, I wonder what happened to the lake. And what happened was California used the fucking water because they're water hogs, and there's too many fucking people living there, right? And so Trump immediately says, oh, they dumped it into the Pacific. Like he knows exactly what happened because he heard some other bullshit story that may or may not have any truth or validity to it. But if it does, Trump didn't fact check it because he doesn't fact check things. And he just talks shit. Like he just says, oh, I heard this other thing that they're dumping water, that fresh water, because they're trying to protect some fish, this environmental thing, right? He goes off against the environmentalists because he's always trying to do something, whether it's drill oil or build a building, and there's environmental laws that get in his way. And of course, he's embracing Bobby Kennedy, who's a big environmentalist. But the problem is that we've fucked the environment enough, and human beings suck so bad. We should know by now, like, let's not make the environment any fucking worse, right? Whether you believe in global warming or any kind of shit like that, we've destroyed habitats for no reason. We're consuming resources at an epic rate. We're cutting down trees. We're doing bad shit. For what? Because look around you. Like, how many people's lives are worthwhile? I mean, you can say this about yourself, but you can look at other people. And the majority of people are just miserable, depressed zombies going through life unconsciously. And they're not progressing. The number one thing I can talk about is spirituality, right? Like, you have a spiritual purpose. Your soul has a purpose. And this I know more than anything. Like, this is, if I have some expertise, and you can't say you have expertise in this because the spiritual universe is infinite. But if I know a little bit more than most people about one subject, it's this, because it's my passion, right? It's my big thing. And this idea of samskaras, that every impression that you create is something that you have to deal with in your future, right? Your decisions you're making now and the things that you're, focused on, everything you think, say, or do or feel. And the stronger you feel about, the stronger you think about, the more passion there is, creates impressions of things that you're going to have to live off in the future. If you have an addiction and you're thinking about getting high or drinking or using drugs and you're, stealing money to support your habit. If you have a gambling addiction, you're thinking about sports and betting and you're just over and over again. You have a sexual addiction, you're watching porn all the time, you're having deviant fantasies, all these things. They create more impressions, so you have to deal with that in the future. And if you do have some sort of addiction or you have some kind of obsession, that creates very deep impressions. And if you don't deal with that, you don't get rid of that this life, you have to come back and do it in a future existence, right? But either way, you have to deal with it in the future, right? So this is, on a spiritual level. And most people are having selfish, egotistical thoughts that create more and more baggage and burden and make you go the opposite direction of your spiritual self. And you're going to have to suffer for these things. There's, any kind of pleasure has pain on the other side of it, like any kind of a, momentary pleasure, impulsive decisions, thoughtful decisions, obsessions, anything that you have that, creates these, pleasure brings about pain, right? Everything has its opposite. Everything that in the universe, if you have one thing, the other thing that is opposite goes hand in hand. If you have happiness, then misery's down the road, like these things, right? Like all these things. And I mean, even like the act of, like the pleasure of sex and the pain of childbirth and the pain of raising children, right? Like there's, it's great and it's hard and there's, they all go hand in hand, right? Some days it's wonderful, some days it's hell, it's like these things, like all of these things. Money, success, there's things that go with it. There's burdens that go with it, right? Power burdens, right? Beauty. There's things that go with, being successful, beautiful, healthy, these things. The opposite is waiting for you, right? Inner ugliness, right? It's going to, like you're beautiful now. What are you going to be in 20 years? Like your inner ugliness, your narcissism starts to show on your face and these things, right? Everything comes back around. And Americans have been trained to be so short-sighted that they don't realize the damage that they're doing, right? And damage that you're doing right now, like let's say you damage the environment, you're going to have to live with that in the future. You're going to have to suffer. Like you might be away from it, living in some like rich person place where Trump is away from everything and everybody. And so what we're doing to the environment is going to come back and haunt us. All these bad decisions we're making, the hellscape that we're creating, and Trump got into nuclear power, right? Which, like he said, people are worried about global warming, but nuclear bombs and nuclear war, like Trump was very clear about this, is something like he kind of knew about. Because he said he rebuilt the arsenal and that China would be what we have in 5 years, and Russia already does, right? And so understanding this, like this idea of a nuclear war and what it would mean. And, all the hatred people are feeling, all the negativity about other countries and, other political parties and the division that's being created, that is what incubates and creates war. And we're moving towards it because people just want it. Like people want something different. They want to change because they're miserable. And you just look around at people's faces and they're, all of it. And they want some pie in the sky person to say, like Trump or Kamala Harris saying this, no, if you vote for me, it's going to be okay. Because that'll make them rest easy because they know deep inside we're fucked and we're going in the wrong direction. And, the environment's part of that. And Trump's like wanting to build more buildings for, shitty people to go and live shitty lives, right? And so he can make his profit, whatever it is, on some natural habitat is wrong. Like at some point you realize, we're going in the wrong direction. We're going in the wrong fucking direction. And, you can think about this personally, like how you're going in the wrong direction. And most people can't do shit about it, even when they realize it, because they're bankrupt inside. They have no energy. They have no way. There's no, part of them that can, work towards changing because they're just so, they just can't do it, right? It's sad, but that's how people are. They're walking ghouls. They're walking zombies. And a lot of those people are people in power, and you have these compulsions, and they have these things that, are beyond your control. And there's a part of Trump. Well, let me say this first about beyond your control. So my wife and I were, having, we were going for a walk and we were talking about things, and I joked about Haystacks Calhoun. Now I haven't thought about Haystacks Calhoun. I recently watched that Vince McMahon, documentary, which I talked about. I made a couple of videos about it because it was really important to the whole Trump, whatever bullshit Trump thing. And there was this wrestler named Haystacks Calhoun. He was he was a hillbilly, big beard, really big and fat, giant, but like just a giant of like a, morbidly obese giant who did wrestling, right? And he had a great name, Haystacks Calhoun. He wore like a, like a hillbilly hat, and he wore suspenders, and this thing. Now, I don't know what the context of me saying it was because we were talking about something. It wasn't wrestling. It wasn't these things. I don't know if it was like hillbillies, but I don't know why I would have, So it was whatever reason I said it. My wife didn't know who that was because she didn't, this was early wrestling. And we're watching the interview, and like it's probably 2 hours and 20 minutes into the interview. I didn't bookmark this part because I didn't think about it. But Trump says to Joe Rogan, like Haystacks Calhoun. And I'm like, this thing happens to me all the time. Well, I'll have a memory that I didn't even know I still had. Like it's something I haven't thought about in years. Like I haven't thought about, I don't remember the last time I thought or, heard the name or saw Haystacks Calhoun, right? This is from my youth, as a kid, like when I watched wrestling as a kid, right? Probably like 70s or 80s, right? And so, and my wife never heard of this person. And I don't know why, I brought it up, but the memory came to me. And then a couple days later, something else will, I'll see a clip of something. I'll think of something and I'll see a clip of it. And other people have said this has been happening to them. But for this to happen, and this is what I want to talk about here, my wife and I would have had to watch the whole Trump interview. I could have been fast forwarding it and just heard him say Haystacks Calhoun, but I had no intention of watching 3 hours of Trump, but we were taking a little bit of a car ride, my wife and I, and we started listening to it, and we were joking about it. It was kind of entertaining, like in a not a like Trump is great way, but in a kind of laughing at him and all of these things, and for this thing to be a confirmation that there's a plan, and that's what I always talk about, because this indicates to me that there's a plan. That I had no choice. I was going to listen to Trump's interview. Me remembering Haystacks Calhoun, and out of nowhere, like I'm talking about 30 years that I haven't, and you know what I mean. It's like, and I don't think I saw. I don't know if that was even part of the documentary with Vince McMahon. I don't think they even talked about Haystacks Calhoun as, they had so many different wrestlers over the years, but it was. It's been a month since I watched Vince McMahon thing, and I haven't, Mr. McMahon. And I haven't really thought about it very much. Other people have commented, once in a while. But I've moved on from the, I talked about it in 2 videos, and that was it. Like, I'm done with it. And once in a while I make a reference to Trump's bullshit. He says some things that I'll show you about his ear and the whole thing. I already showed you some, and I'll re-show you that part of the other video. But you understand this, that, for it to mean anything, like, if things are chaotic, they're chaotic, right? In your stream of consciousness. But for this to mean that there's a plan, which I get confirmation all the time, that I had to watch this interview. Like, I heard about it, and I was like, I'll watch some bits and pieces. I'm not going to waste 3 hours of my time. I had no intention of watching it. But we watched the whole thing, right? Because it was supposed to happen. It was going to happen. Like, there was part of a plan. The interview was supposed to happen. Everything that's going to happen is going to happen. And I've seen this over and over again. Like, things are going to happen no matter what. Like, there's certain things you just can't change. And there's reasons for it. But it's like, you do make choices and you do make decisions. But it's really about how you go about it. Like, it's just with an attitude of, being grateful, an attitude of gratitude, of being, thankful for everything. And understanding if it's for the greater good. Especially when it's something you don't like, right? Which is what people just can't do. Because everyone thinks that there's some sort of, there's something that they can change, or there's something that, like you can avoid things you can't avoid. And, we're going into that. And having said that, Trump is like a child. I'm going to go eat breakfast here. I want to say this part, and then I'll finish this up. But there are times where Trump, there's this sketch that Key and Peele do. And Peele plays Jaden Smith. And he, Will Smith's son. And he plays him like Jaden Smith doesn't know about real life. Like there's one of the jokes is the guy, he's on a phone call with his agent as he wants to do a movie. And he refers to outside as the place you go between your mansion and your limousine, like things like that. And he said, that they have a story for him. His agent's trying to sell him a story about like a movie. And he says the character has to make a choice. And he goes, choice? He goes, yeah, when there's two things and you can only do one of them. And he goes, well, and he tells the guy before that he doesn't want to do science fiction. And he goes, no, I don't want to do science fiction. I already told you. Like he doesn't know that that you have to choose because he always gets both things, right? Like just living this like sheltered life. It's kind of a hilarious sketch if you've seen it. And, there's the story of Siddhartha the Buddha, the original Buddha, for Buddhism. And he was a prince and he lived this sheltered life. And he goes outside the castle and he starts seeing the sights of poverty and smells and dead people. And he's like, oh my God, this world is hell. And it makes him give up his princehood. He goes into the woods and starts meditating because he didn't want people to suffer the way they were suffering. And he like that's how Buddhism started, right? This guy was an Indian prince and he lived a sheltered life. And Trump says things all the time in this interview that shows like he's completely naive. And Joe Rogan's telling him something. He's like, is that true? Is that so? Trump's like a child, like an innocent child, like he has no idea. Like when he was talking about the water shortage in California, he kept on saying people in Beverly Hills. He said Beverly Hills like 8 fucking times. Because that's the people he knows. Like he's grown up rich his whole life. His dad was a multimillionaire, and Trump grew up sheltered. He's just always experienced a level of treatment. And I said this before. People would say he was always Mr. Trump, right? Oh yes, Mr. Trump. Oh yes, he'd walk in. He was Donald Trump, and he got treated like a rich man, a billionaire, but also as a celebrity. And everybody loved him, and even, Rogan was talking about that. He'd go on The View, and people loved the guy, right? David Letterman loved him. They all loved him until he was president, and all of a sudden now everybody hates him, or all these people hate him. And, like, he's just clueless about all of it because he's never lived a life. He's never lived a real life. He doesn't know how real people, and all these people get that way. Like, they can grow up in poverty, but by the time they've, had 10 years or 5 years of wealth, like they've forgotten most of those things, right? They still have maybe memories, but you become, a new person. And it happens all the time. You see people who, they get married and they start being adults, and you remember like how wild they were in college. And now like they're driving a minivan, they're safety oriented, you're like, that isn't like nearly the same person as I used to know, right? But Trump's never had those experiences. Like he's just like a little kid, this innocent kid being told things, right? Like they're talking about UFOs and, how he looked into that and he kind of was interested in it. And Joe Rogan goes, do you believe that there's, extraterrestrial life? And Trump said, yeah, and I'll play you the clip. He goes, yeah, like, I got to believe that there's life on Mars. Joe Rogan's like, life on Mars? What the fuck are you talking? Joe Rogan totally believes in it. And he starts telling Trump, and Trump says, yeah, I don't know. Like, Trump doesn't even know there's no life on fucking Mars, right? I mean, there is life. It just isn't physical, biological life. There's soul life on all these planets. There's, soul energy. There's, etheric beings. But that's not what anybody's talking about, Trump certainly. And so, like, that part's interesting. Let me just go eat, and I'll come back and wrap this up and show you the clips. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the clips now, and the clips will... I can't remember everything. I was going to take notes, but I didn't have time to do it. We listened to the thing yesterday, and I've already forgot some of the things I was going to say. Very telling, though, like I said. Very interesting. A definition of Trump. But, like, his level of cluelessness, like things he didn't know about and things he couldn't answer. Like Joe Rogan had to bring him back from rambling on, and going off track. And like, Joe Rogan was clearly smarter than Trump. And Joe Rogan, for whatever, people have their ways of finding out the truth, right? And to whatever extent Joe Rogan is a truth seeker. He's not a truther, and he said shit about the truth community, and he has ties to Hollywood, and whatever shill stuff he has, and he's making hundreds of millions of dollars on his podcast, and his association with the whole MMA thing, which they talk about quite a bit. They talk about how great a guy Dana White is, and Dana White isn't a great guy, right? At least not spiritually. He's whatever he is a friend and a person, and he's loyal to Trump because Trump bailed him out. And that's, why Trump was there. I mean, Joe Rogan said that's why you're here, for his end, right? And, Joe Rogan will say things and base it in statistics and facts. Oh, the one thing I want to say here is, I'll cover it and I'll show you like part of it. But they get into food. And Joe Rogan talks about the problems with the food and how it affects people. And Trump's like, yeah, kind of listening to him and into it. And, I saw the same thing Trump did with Dianne Feinstein and the other Democrats that were pushing for gun control. And then for asset forfeiture, where cops can just take your money and take your assets, like, just steal it basically. And Trump was like, why would anybody be against asset forfeiture? Why would, like he had no clue. He's hearing about it the first time, but he comes off like an expert. Like I said about the whole California lake thing, where like he just says, oh, I know what this is. And without doing any sort of really deep thought or, analysis or research, he just says, oh, I know. I'm just a great guy and I'm a knower and I know. And, and Joe Rogan's telling him about the food thing and Trump's like, listening to him. And if you were a Kennedy and RFK Jr. supporter and you were into food, you're these Casey and Callie Means or whatever those two people are that Tucker Carlson had, these things that are going around, this idea about food and, the issues with food and the issues with pharmaceuticals and things. And Trump sounds like he gets it and he's on board. But we know that he made a deal with RFK Jr. and Pfizer gave him $1 million and he changed his complete, he reversed himself. And Trump has the ability to listen in such a way and, talk to people in such a way that it makes you feel like he gets it and he's on your side. But the wind can blow the other direction and he's gone. Like, it's just hilarious. And that's why Trump has been so successful, because people think he's with them just the way he can interact with you, because he's a salesman. He knows how to make people feel good about themselves. He knows how to, compliment them. And he did it with Joe Rogan over and over again. Oh, you're a great guy. This is a great show. And, this thing. He talks about people. Dana White, he's the best. This way of saying, talking. And he pumps things up because that's what he does. He's a salesman. He's not going to tell you things you don't want to hear because he's trying to sell you something, right? And that's why he's been so successful at conning people. But he doesn't know anything. Like, he's clearly clueless about pretty much everything. And what he knows is like, the first thing he hears, it's either he buys into the official story, and half the times he's talking about things I know that aren't true, and like he's got it wrong, or like he just hears a rumor, like he heard that thing about they're eating the dogs, like that whole like he just hears it and he just repeats it in such a way that he does it with such conviction and so much confidence. Like, yeah, this is it. This is what we're going to do. We got the best people. But once you realize he's bullshitting all the time, it becomes silly. Like, it's like, how could anybody believe him? He's been shown over and over again. He not only doesn't know, but he doesn't care. He's not passionate about anything, right? He's passionate about himself and his, things that have to do with him and his legacy and his, all this kind of stuff. Trump cares about Trump, and he doesn't care about you, right? We fuck the other guy and pass the savings on to you. That's like, he's that guy, right? Okay, so this is the first clip. Trump is talking about tariffs and how tariffs are the miracle. He always has something like this, right? And there's reasons that tariffs are a bad idea. I understand some of the reasons for tariffs, but there's the negative consequences of tariffs go to jail. One of which is that it's going to drive up prices, right? That anything that you put a tariff on that's coming from a country, from a foreign country, right, that increases what they have to pay, their costs, is going to be passed on to you as the consumer. And so if they put heavy tariffs on all Chinese goods, then everything you get from China is going to be, that's going to be added on to you, right? China's not going to pay for it. It might mean they sell less. It might mean that Americans can't afford their stuff as much anymore, so it's going to hurt them. But the prices isn't going to stay the same. They're not going to absorb the tariff, right? And some of these goods they can't make in America because American labor is too expensive. So that's just one, aspect of tariffs. Immediately it's going to cost you more. In a time where people are freaked out by the price of things, you add tariffs to that. Trump's idea is that we're going to get rid of some of the trade deficit. And so, our goods aren't being sold because it costs too much to make them in America. And labor is cheaper in these other countries, right? So there's, reasons that tariffs aren't the answer. But Trump always has to have something, and he just leaves out the negative, and he just sells you something that, is just kind of smoke and mirrors. But he's talking about how the trade deficit came about in the first place. And then he says that these people, these big business people, own all the politicians, which is important. Like, this is something where, he drops these little bits of truth into his just rambling and his bullshit, right? And I'm going to come back to his, he says something about the shooting in the beginning of the video, and then there's the part I showed you already, and he talks more about it later on in the video. And, like he's there he drops a little hint of truth too, where there's a sentence where, like, he just, a guy who's just rambling and saying all kinds of, crazy things and bullshitting. And then, like, there's one line that you say, oh, yeah, there it is.
Please don't you? They, believe me, they control our politicians. If you look at the kind of numbers that these guys make then and now.
But Trump's admitting that these guys have been bought and sold, right? Because he used to buy them. He talks about how he used to be a Democrat. And Joe Rogan gets into that. And Trump can't remember when he became a Republican. That's something that you would think he would remember. Like he said, I have to go look at the dates because there would be a reason that he switched. And he'd have to remember what that reason was, right? Because he was an avid Democrat. He was a part of the Hollywood culture. He loved the Clintons. And Republicans and the people that love Trump now, the MAGA people, they didn't like Trump then. They didn't like his show, right? But he is somebody who is a capitalist and a flim-flam man, but also a businessman. And he bought and sold people, and he's been bought and sold. And he has a price, because that's what he believes in, right? He believes in, being bought, right? Being owned in these things, right? Being, understanding when somebody is in a superior financial position to you or, can give you something that you want and that you have to, give them something back, right? And so Trump is so easy to be controlled. People think he's an outsider and he's there fighting for you. What are you giving him other than your adoration, which he loves? He loves the adoration on stage. And so he's going to continue to sell you things and promise you things. But other than that, he doesn't have to do shit for you, and you don't have any leverage over him. But other countries can, right? Or other, institutions can. He's bought and sold. And so to think Trump isn't a sellout, he's been a sellout his whole financial life because that's what he's all about, right? He knows those things. And he's admitting all these politicians are owned, and including himself, right? But he's not saying that because he wants you to believe what you want to believe, which is that he's some sort of outsider that's going to change everything, but he's never been that. Bullshit. Okay, so the next one is, Trump deregulated everything. That's why he had a good economy. But it was only going to be a matter of time before the derivatives market collapsed like it did in 2008. And it did do that, but we had COVID, so they covered it up again. But Trump gave the banksters and the Wall Street exactly what they wanted, and they did the same bullshit they did before. They increased the derivatives market, which is just a debt betting on debt. It's a bad idea. And the same results were there. But Trump was talking about how he was going to pay down debt because the economy was going so well. but then COVID hit. But Trump never takes responsibility for the way he got worked on COVID. When Joe Rogan says, you surround yourself with some people like Bolton and some of these other guys, and Trump said, if I have one regret or mistake, it was I hired the wrong people. But also, more importantly, Operation Warp Speed and the way that he closed down the economy, that was where he fucked up, right? That's where he, caved and got worked. And getting in bed with Pfizer and all that bullshit, right? And so that's where he screwed you, and he played himself. And then what he did post-election, which they talk about extensively. But let's go to the COVID thing here first.
And then we had the COVID thing, and we had to focus on that. And if we didn't give some businesses a hand, you would have had a depression like in 1929. But we were ready to start. We would have very shortly been paying off debt. We have $35 trillion in debt.
So in what way were you going to pay off debt? Because it's tax revenue. And Trump wasn't they're generating more tax revenue now and still not paying off debt, right? You would need to generate, right now it's like at $5 trillion, which is the most it's ever been. Before it was at 3 for most years, and then it got up to 4, maybe a year. During the Biden term, it got up to 4. But Trump was working with $3 trillion something dollars in revenue and taxes, and the budget was more than that, and everything else was more than that. We're hundreds of millions of dollars in debt, right? I mean, we're trillions of dollars in debt. Every 3 minutes, we add another $1 trillion of debt in terms of interest and all of it, right? I mean, crazy. And for him to say they would pay off debt from where? Like what? Like there was going to be more tax revenue? No. So the bailouts you gave just increased inflation. And you didn't have to do that because we now know that shutting down the economy was unnecessary. This was a global scam. There was reasons for it, far beyond the money that these pharmaceutical companies paid, right? And he gets into COVID, and, he says all these things now, but he was, Joe Rogan's against all this stuff with Pfizer and all this stuff, right? And so Trump is, he knows who his audience is. He knows who Joe Rogan's audience is, and he knows Joe Rogan. So, he talks about RFK Jr. and he talks about these things. But, Trump doesn't believe in anything. Like him being a fascist, like I said before, is silly because Trump believes in Trump, and he believes in money, and he believes in fame and publicity and all these superficial things. But he doesn't do deep research on anything. He doesn't care about it. He's not passionate about anything. And so he says these things. There's no way he was going to pay down on the debt, right? Like he just makes shit up, because people want to hear it. But the debt can't be paid down on because we're never going to get into a situation where we're making excess money in terms of tax revenue and our budget is down to lower than our tax revenue, right? The way you pay off debt is that your income becomes more than your expenses and you have extra money and you can start paying down on some of the debt, right? And America's never going to be in that situation again. So this next piece is about Trump talking about how an MIT professor tells Trump, your uncle was a genius. I don't know how much I can show you. I'm going to go with the longer clip here. They might allow you to show, Joe Rogan usually copyrights smallest clips. Like he sucks at that, which is another, piece of shit move on his part because, it promotes his thing and, whatever it is. And so I would show you longer clips, but he might leave this, allow people to show longer clips on this one because he wants to, one of the things he said was he didn't want to get any copyright strikes himself or copyrighted on the video where they take it down so people could see it, right? Because he knew lots of people would watch it and how they're censoring Trump. But, it's all, I've talked about this. But he's talking about his uncle and he gets into nuclear power here. This was about like nuclear, maybe power stations. And of course, Trump talks about and then makes it about nuclear weapons. And he says this.
I have a book on your uncle, Dr. John Trump. He was our longest serving professor. He was a great genius, sir. Do you know how? And he knew everything about nuclear, from math to chemistry to nuclear. He knew it. And he said someday it's going to be the way to go, but the problem is it's so dangerous in terms of war. He said, Donald, someday, and this was a long time, Uncle John, Dr. John Trump, he said, someday you'll have a little satchel at your side and you'll go into a building and you'll be able to blow up New York City. I said, Uncle John, that'll never happen. He's right. He's right.
Okay, so first of all, he said this guy knew more about chemistry and nuclear power. He's a genius, the greatest guy ever at MIT, the longest serving professor, the typical Trump stuff, right? Trump builds the guy up, and the guy's obviously an expert in this area. And he tells a young dopey Donald something about this. And he goes, Uncle John, that'll never happen. It just, he shows you what an arrogant piece of shit he is, right? But what about just blowing up one building? Right? He's saying you'd have this little, handheld device and you'd be able to blow up the whole city. But now, what about one building? Like maybe in New York, right? And I said this before to people. They have handheld nukes. Israel has developed some of these, these types of things, and they're using them all the time to blow up buildings. It was in that show, The Last Resort. And they blew up buildings with nuclear, devices. And I covered this now in my video on my other channel about the big event in 2001. And unfortunately, it's got only 3,000 views. Like I remade my original videos about this, and there's groundbreaking stuff in there, like things that I know about thyroid cancer and all this stuff, ground zero, all that stuff. So, but Trump kind of confirms that here. Okay, so I'm going to play the beginning of my last video, which was really supposed to be part of this video because it was about the interview with Joe Rogan. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This video was completely done. I was uploading it. I had rendered it. It was ready to go. But one of my viewers sent me this, and kaboom, ka-freaking boom. Trump got rolled here by Joe Rogan. Trump shows him his fake, non-existent scar. And so let's just watch this here. But for all you, I don't want to call you fake truthers, but, not necessarily shills, but all the people that made videos, all you guys who left hostile comments, all you people that claim to be truth seekers and didn't even contemplate, didn't even suggest to yourself, didn't even explore the idea that this thing could be fake when it was so WWE. It was so fake. And Trump's such a lying piece of crap. He's just such a, tool. And because of your belief in Trump or whatever your reasoning, you didn't even explore the idea that this could be fake. This is for you because you're getting schooled, son.
You even have a scar on your ear? You got anything on there?
I do.
What do we say? What do you got
So, right over here.
Oh, it's a tiny little mark.
His bandage didn't even cover that, right? His bandage, I'll pull that up when we're done here. But you see where he's pointing here? Like he's pointing in different places here.
Oh, it's a tiny little mark.
He's pointing different places. And so he had that big maxi pad over his ear at the convention. And when they went to the hospital, they said it didn't need stitches. The blood had already dried, and there was no evidence of a cut. I'll show you. I have the cut there somewhere. I'll show you the picture after we're done with this. And it was just so fake. And so let's go through this again, right?
Anything on there?
I do.
What do we say? What do you got
So, right over here.
Oh, it's a tiny
He's pointing to a bunch of different places. It's tiny.
little
See,
mark.
it zicked right there.
Yeah. But it healed up pretty fucking good.
Well, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's little.
It's little. It's little. It's a little bit little. It's little. Kaboom. Okay, so let me interrupt what I'm doing here. And let's go back to a week after, or whatever this was, when he dropped this. He said this a number of times, right? And so here it is.
They keep saying, he's a threat to democracy. I'm saying, what the hell did I do for democracy? Last week, I took a bullet for democracy. What did I do against democracy? Crazy.
Okay, so this was a planned line, first of all, right? This was a set, rehearsed line that he was going to say, right? There was a big zinger. And he was supposed to say, what did I ever do to democracy that they're saying this? Instead, he said, what did I ever do for democracy? And so that's a Joe Biden type gaffe, right? But that's not the big problem here. The problem is this taking a bullet, right? Are you saying this non-existent scar that didn't need stitches is taking a bullet? Come on, bro. Let's watch that again.
It healed up pretty fucking good.
Well, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's little.
Okay, so this video is mostly a hammering Kamala and the people behind her. Like, this was mostly a Kamala video. And, I talk a little bit about Trump here or there, but it was mostly about them hammering toxic masculinity. I get into that and how that's really an attack on testosterone in men. And, I've covered this a little bit, but I focus more on it. And then all the insincerity and how Kamala Harris isn't, a real person, right? She's not authentic. And so that's how the video was going to go. But then he went on Joe Rogan and exposed this fraudulent, fake assassination attempt. It was so fucking fake, right? But let's say you believe it's real. He has exaggerated the shit out of this thing, right? That's not taking a bullet for democracy, right? And so first of all, he made the blood, the fake blood, all that stuff that happened. It was all fake, right? But if you believe in it, he's saying it nicked him. And so, like, it's just, that's not, like, imagine calling in sick to work because you had that small of a cut, right? Like, I talk about how when I do farming work, I cut myself all the time worse than that. And I just, tape it up, put a Band-Aid on it, whatever, or sometimes not even that. And I go out and finish the job, right? Sometimes I can't find a Band-Aid. I wrap a paper towel around it and I just keep on going. And I'm not like some big tough guy. People do that every day, right? People play hurt. And then he's demeaned the military. He's demeaned people like John McCain. And so he has this little tiny non-existent scar because he didn't get hit by anything. And again, we're going to get back to this. I just decided to drop these things here. And so on top of it, he then milked the crap out of this with a bandage, this maxi pad he put on. And I'm going to say these things again over here, so I don't want to get too repetitive. And then he put a small Band-Aid on after that. So he had a Band-Aid on for 13 days, and he's talking about it, taking a bullet. Do you think he deserved a Purple Heart? Remember, some guy gave up his Purple Heart to Trump for this non-existent nick. He's admitting that he nicked him, and it didn't even nick him, right? And so he's bullshitting you, right? He's exaggerating this thing. At the very least, he's totally exaggerating this thing. And I said all along there was nothing there, and that he should have showed it. But he didn't. And so now it comes out on Joe Rogan. It's a little. And so that's wonderful. That's the first part here. It's fake as fuck. You clowns. Everybody who didn't, at least. You just have to question things. That's what your job is as a truther. And if you just put this out here like this actually happened, and they think about the implications of this guy being president. Like, he's a part of this, right? And if he's a part of it, like, what does that mean? Like, he's not just a part of it. He defrauded you. He waved the flag in your fucking face and pretended to be a hero and a patriot, and he didn't. There was nothing that happened to him. He didn't get hit. There was no bullets. Come on, bro. And, when he put that giant frickin' maxi pad on his ear and he came out in the convention, 3-4 days later, and then he came out with a Band-Aid even after that he had a Band-Aid for 13 days. A cut that didn't need stitches, that stopped bleeding almost immediately. As soon as he stood up, there was no blood. I've shown you it before. I'll start the next video with this because, we'll start over again. And I'll cover some of this, I think, probably. I haven't seen this interview. Now I want to watch it because it seems like he's not, just giving Trump an easy pass here, right? And so there was nothing there. And so when he put a big maxi pad on his ear, for what? Like, there's like, why did he need such a giant bandage on his ear during the convention? And then a smaller bandage after that. Like, he's showing you right here. He's showing you 3 different places where it is, right?
So, right over here.
Where? Like, he's pointing the whole, like it hit this whole ear? No. You're saying it hit here? All right, let me go to this other picture. So I have another picture that shows you Trump's ear before. So you would think that this was where the bullet hit, but it didn't, because his Trump is naturally shaped like that. There's this video of his ear, what it looked like before, right? And so this is, the fake blood that they put on there. And so he pointed to this whole area over here. Like he rubbed his finger back and forth, like he didn't know where it hit. And after they took off the maxi pad, they put the bandage here. And so he had this when he did an interview with Jesse Walters, and he put this bandage on for 13 days. And this thing, again, no stitches. So it basically completely healed. Joe Rogan sees there's no scar, and he's pointing to it like there is one. And, Trump, if he was going to be, if he's going to get into it, he should have, there's my alarm. He should have just, the guy should have just let him take out a chunk of his ear. Like, you have to do that. Like, just a little bit. No one would even notice. But he didn't want to do it. He's too much of a bonus hole for that. Okay, so I just released this video, and I'm noticing there's a couple of spots here that they're just, it's like some part of it just didn't take the video. I don't know if I'm having problems because of my computer glitching out. My computer's not running great. But I was talking about that he went to the convention and he had this giant Band-Aid on. It's not very clear. And so I'm editing now in real time. But let's get back to my earlier clip here. But there's a piece missing at the convention. And when they went to the hospital, they said it didn't need stitches. The blood had already dried, and there was no evidence of a cut. I'll show you. I have the cut there somewhere. I'll show you the picture after we're done with this. And it was just so fake. And so let's go through this again, right?
Thing on there?
I do.
What do we say? What do you got
So, right over here.
there? Oh, it's a tiny
He's pointing to a bunch of different places. It's tiny.
little
See,
mark.
it zicked right there.
Yeah. But it healed up pretty fucking good.
Well, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's little.
It's little. It's little. It's a little bit little. It's little. Kaboom.
They keep saying, he's a threat to democracy. I'm saying, what the hell did I do for democracy? Last week, I took a bullet for democracy. What did I do against democracy? Crazy.
Okay, so I ended up doing a long introduction about just other stuff that's very pertinent to all these things. And this is kind of an epic video. And again, I want to make this mostly about Kamala, which I'll show you. But if you understand what both people are saying, Kamala's calling him a fascist. J.D. Vance is, there's a headline I just saw 2 minutes ago. It came out. J.D. Vance was saying that the leadership we have now in the country is more dangerous to America than foreign enemies, right? And this is the rhetoric that's out there. Most people realize or believe that we're in a apocalyptic time, right? And they wrongly believe, and many of you wrongly believe, that if one side wins, they can avoid the apocalypse. But if the other side wins, we're going to have it, right? And that's not how things like this work. And I've said this before, and everybody knows this, right? And there's two things to this. That, you look at these two pieces of shit, right? These two horrible people and these two puppets, and they're incompetent, stupid, and, fake, and, Kamala's fake, and Trump's just a piece of shit asshole and a liar and a flim-flam man. And people think, well, sometimes you need a villain to do dirty work, or, sometimes you need a person to fight dirty, like, some dirty, hairy bullshit thing. Or they think that, he's your villain in Trump, or, Kamala Harris is, she might not be great, but at least she's not Trump and anybody but Trump, right? This whole attitude. But if everything that they're saying is true, Joe Biden saying that we're fighting for the soul of America, all the things, the rhetoric that's being placed out there, this is the most important election of our time. You think either one of these dunces could save, you need a great person. If we had, if we were facing an epic collapse type situation, we need a great person. And neither one of these two people is great in any way, shape, or form. And they're both frauds. They're both, they got to where they are not by merit, not by being good at what they do, but by bullshitting or Kamala Harris getting on her knees. So that's the first part. But the second part is even more important. And when you have a country and you have a family and you have a team and you have, whatever it is, right? And you have dissension, like when you and your spouse are fighting, or you and your siblings are fighting, or you and your classmates or workmates, your coworkers are fighting, workmates. When you and your coworkers are fighting, you can't get anything done, right? I mean, we all know that. Like when we're fighting with our, the people in our lives, if you're fighting with your wife or your husband, everything in the family stops. Like it just becomes all about the fight, right? I mean, what happens during divorce? Do you make a lot of progress in your life outside of divorce, right? Because all your energy goes into, bad mouthing and fighting, and you just like you gotta like put everything else on hold, just so you can go into this hate fest, right? I mean, people have more cooperative divorces, and when they do, then you can be productive. But when you just hate each other the way the Democrats and the liberals hate each other, I mean, the Democrats and the Republicans hate each other, nothing can happen. The country can't move forward because we're embroiled in division. And so if America was going to be saved, you'd have to bring America together. And the Democrats and the Republicans aren't going to do that. They're not going to ever come to terms with that. And most people hate the other side so much they would rather see America destroyed than actually save it. And so that's what you're dealing with here. So if you think Trump is going to save America, come on. Like, be realistic. In what way could he save America? Other than the bullshit that, he's lying to you constantly. And he's he's exaggerating this bullshit thing, this WWE fake shooting thing, the fake assassination attempt. And it's, he's going to take your guns. Like, if he's doing this kind of bullshit and you're falling for it, then how far off is him taking your guns? Because he doesn't care about your guns or you or anything, right? And so he's going to be your patsy. He's going to be their patsy. He's going to be the fall guy. I think he's going to win. And then Trumpers are going to be like, oh, my God, we didn't know who he was. Yeah, you did. You just chose to ignore it. Okay, at the beginning of the interview, Joe Rogan's talking to Trump about how he's being mistreated and being targeted and these things. And then Trump gets into the shooting a little bit. And then Joe Rogan obviously wanted to bring it up later, the shooting. And he brought it up later when he said, they were talking about Elon Musk, and Trump said, Elon Musk did an interview with Theo Vaughn, who Joe Rogan calls his friend Theo Vaughn, who has a podcast, who's, a comedian. I think he was on a Real World, one of those, whatever it was. And Trump said, well, is that why you invited me on here? And the real reason had to do with Dana White, which he gets into, I think, later in the video. And so Joe Rogan said, as soon as you were shot, I knew you were going to come on here. And so that was, Joe Rogan. Now, Joe Rogan then asks him about, all the stuff that has to do with his, that ear thing I already showed you, the piece you already saw. And I'm going to show you what happened after that. But before that, Trump is talking about how he was hit and he was down, and he goes back and forth with his story. Of course, he's said over and over again that he's looked at his hand, and he saw it was all bloody. And we saw that there's no blood on his hand. There was no blood on his hand before and after. No dry blood on his hand. So he was on the ground. He didn't put his hand on his ear. And I've showed you the pictures of his hands in various videos after the shooting. And you can see from the video of the shooting itself on various places that he touches his ear and he looks at his hand and there's nothing on his hand, right? But even though there's video evidence showing the opposite, Trump doesn't watch things. Like, he doesn't watch things, going back to what I was saying earlier about Roseanne Barr saying that there was MK Ultra in Hollywood. Trump isn't somebody who finds things interesting. Like him saying later, what you'll hear about life on Mars. It's like fucking goofy, right? Like, he says goofy stuff. He doesn't know a lot of things because he's not interested in things. He's not the person who's inquisitive. He looks at things very superficially. And because of that, you can tell when there are problems with America, he often just delegates somebody to deal with it because that's what rich people do. Oh, you handle that. Like, you're an expert. You handle that. I don't know anything about that. You do it. And so Trump is just handing over power in his presidency to whoever's can, make a problem disappear because he doesn't want to, it's like when you don't want to read the instructions for something, right? Like, you're putting something together, like, this is what I do. And I think I can just put it together without reading the instructions. Like, reading the instructions is, like, painful. And, my wife will read them and, like, we'll work together or whatever it might be. Part of that's being me being dyslexic or whatever. But if you don't want to hear about something and then you want to talk about it like you're an expert and you don't want to look into it and fact check it and be thoughtful about it, you're a dangerous leader because you're just going on, very limited knowledge. And he's not somebody who's, he tries to sell himself as somebody who just makes the right decisions, right? Like, he just gets things and he just makes the right decisions. But he doesn't do that. Like, he's not that guy at all. Like, he's gone bankrupt 6 times. He's not some genius businessman who just knows how to do things and he sees things and he's really competent. He's not competent. It's been shown over and over again he's not competent. Like, with all the Trump hate that's out there, all the stuff about how Trump is this and how Trump is that, and them twisting his words and taking his words out of context and his ramblings that everyone knows aren't, like, he doesn't give a shit about, calling him a fascist. I push back against all those things. But the things that about him being an incompetent businessman who lies and a flim-flam man who goes bankrupt and doesn't pay his bills and doesn't pay his employees and screws people over and it's just all of it being fake. All the stuff about him being a dope on The Apprentice, I believe, because that's who he is as a president. He's a complete fraud. Like, he's a fraud, and you guys have bought into the fraud, you Trumpers, even to the extent that he's a piece of shit, but you're still going to vote for him anyway because, Kamala's worse. Well, she's not worse. They're just the same version of the same person, and neither one of them is going to have any real power because nobody would give power to either one of these two dopes, right? And so Trump says this. He's talking about how the Secret Service said he was hit all over the place. But then he's going to tell you the truth right here. Even though it's a little bit out of context, he's going to say it. Because he is talking about the Secret Service saying, you're hit in the stomach because there's blood everywhere. But they're not saying anything to him. They're piling on top of him, right? They're on top of him. And, like, it's chaotic. And he makes up this story about this interaction. But in reality, this is the truth, what he's about to tell you here.
When that happened, I really knew where I was. I knew exactly what happened. I said I wasn't hit anywhere else.
Yeah, I said I wasn't hit anywhere. You weren't hit anywhere. You didn't get hit. You weren't shot because we know it. Like, we know what happened. There's no evidence of it on your ear. The blood dried as soon as you stood up. I mean, all these things. I've gone over in video after video. And there's one more piece to this. So that's early on in the video. But he just says it, right? Like, he just says the truth sometimes. And sometimes, the mainstream media will catch it, or sometimes they won't, depending on how it serves their narrative. But the Trumpers never see it. It's hilarious. Like, they just won't see it. He tells you, the most truthful thing he said is he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose anybody. And when he said that to you, you should have known you're in a cult if you're a Trumper, but you didn't, because you just won't see it. But this is the other part. This is at the end of that clip that I showed you. Somebody sent me a little bit of a clip on Instagram, and I want to show you the end of it here.
Right there.
Yeah. It healed up pretty fucking good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's not like some of the wrestlers, some of the UFC fighters.
No, you didn't
It's
get
a little
cauliflower
bit,
ear.
no. It was sort of like a top shot.
Mm-hmm.
The point of the bullet was a little of the ass, but you see the thing's taken off a little bit, but it makes me a tougher guy.
So there's no real damage, and he didn't need to wear that frickin' giant maxi pad at the convention center. In fact, Joe Rogan later talks about how Trump golfed a couple of days because he's talking about exercise. He talked about how he golfed with some professional golfer. They were doing something like a day or after, 2 days after the shooting. And then, of course, he had the convention. And, it's not, he needed no stitches. So that's a boo-boo by any definition. Like, that's fact. We see there's no damage. Joe Rogan can't even see it. There's no visible scar. Trump has to sort of bullshit his way to say which way the bullet went in. Like, nobody knows that. Could have been a fragment that hit him, but it wasn't. There was just, the whole thing is WWE. And anybody who's looking at it objectively would see it. Like all the things I've showed you. And he's lied about it so much, right? But at the very least, we can agree that he's exaggerating. He didn't need a bandage for 13 days on the thing. All of it, right? We can all agree on that because it was a non-existent wound. And Trump saying it's little, right? And here's a guy who gives Trump his Purple Heart. Let me go back, show you this. I wished I had showed you this at the beginning of the other video. But here, I'm showing it here, so it's the same thing. But this guy gives Trump his Purple Heart, right? And that's just like, come on. Like it's, let's listen to that here.
To you after you'd been shot in Pennsylvania. Dear President Trump, watching you during the Butler rally and you getting back up, both my wife and I gave a sigh of relief as well as a few tears. I would be honored if you would accept this small token that I received as a young Marine in Vietnam. My wife and I both thought it appropriate. God bless you, your family, and the United States of America. Sincerely, Dwight. Dwight, where are you at?
Thank you. Whoa. Looks like a check. It's a check. It's cash.
For those of you who may not know, Dwight had given President Trump his Purple Heart.
That's right. That's right.
I couldn't think anybody more deserving of the Purple Heart.
Thank you very much.
You took it, you laid down there, you got back up, and the first words out of your mouth was fight, fight, fight. You didn't even have anything to shoot back at.
I mean, this is so fucked up. But the other thing is, Trump goes into this whole thing. He's talking about flying into Iraq, which I'll get into in a moment, to do with ISIS. But because I have a clip from that. And he talked about being assassinated and the danger to his life. And he's clearly somebody who is, he said, everyone says Trump's a coward. Like he's saying that when he's in this, they had to turn off the lights of the plane to land blind in Iraq, right? He's talking about the pilots and how good looking they are, and I'll show you that in a bit. But Trump is somebody who is very concerned about his physical well-being. There's a time that somebody stormed the stage and Trump looked all weird. There's a commercial now with, let me see if I can find that commercial here. So remember when Trump was doing that promo with two wrestlers? They were talking about doing a tag team against Dave Bautista, Kamala Harris, and Jimmy Kimmel's. I think this is from Jimmy Kimmel's show. And Dave Bautista goes in on Trump's masculinity.
Fellas, we gotta talk. A lot of men seem to think that Donald Trump is some kind of tough guy. He's not.
He's not.
I mean, look at him. He wears more makeup than Dolly Parton. He whines like a baby. The guy's afraid of birds.
Like, this is Trump, right? And, it's okay Trump's like this, but he's not physically tough. He's definitely worried about his safety. Like, he's talking about death like he's somebody who's not going to die well. He's really scared of death, right? And, I was saying this to my wife. If you were really going to be a real president, if you were going to go in and be a real president, you were going to be a sellout, you weren't going to be an asset, you weren't going to be a shill, you would have to make your peace with dying. RFK Jr., he did an interview with some comedian, and the lights went out, and the comedian said he panicked, and he was talking to his wife and saying, it was like she's waiting for her to sort of protect him, and I think they're doing it. They're trying to get me. He just got all weird, right? You would have to make your peace with death, right? There's certain jobs, jobs in which you're going to risk your life, like real firemen and real, certainly people in the military, where you have to make your peace with it, right? You have to understand that that's a possibility, and you have to do your job, despite the fact that you might die, right? And Trump clearly hasn't done that. You know, this commercial's goofy and Dave Bautista sucks, but Trump isn't that guy. Like, he's not the Purple Heart guy, right?
Donald Trump had his daddy pay a doctor to say his little feet hurt so he could dodge the draft. Look at that gut, like a garbage bag full of buttermilk. He sells imaginary baseball cards pretending to be a cowboy fireman. Guy's barely strong enough to hold an umbrella. I mean, look how he drinks water. Like a little pink chickadee. He's got jugs, big ones, like Dolly Parton. He cheats at golf. He creeps around beauty pageant dressing rooms. You know that little dance he does? He looks like he's jacking off a pair of giraffes. He's moody, he pouts, he throws
It's one of the few times Jimmy Kimmel makes something that's semi-funny.
tantrums.
No, get those lights off!
He acts like a 5-year-old behind the wheel of a truck. He bends over for Putin. He's cattier on social media than a middle school mean girl. The guy needs help walking downhill. Almost there, Grandma. So this November, let's stop kidding ourselves. Donald Trump is afraid of rain, of dogs, of windmills, Merle Streep, and being laughed at.
Okay, anyways, there's a lot of reality about this, right? Donald Trump is kind of a strange person. He's like a little Lord Fauntleroy, and he's been sheltered from what most people would consider normal American life. And he's very concerned about his physical health in ways that, you know, a guy who was going to take on the establishment wouldn't. Like, he's not your guy.
I like to sit with pilots a lot of times, and these guys are specimens. I always say they're better looking than Tom Cruise, okay? And they're even taller, like perfect specimens. These guys, like for a fighter, you know, you have some guys that are perfect specimens. These
Right.
guys,
What the fuck are you talking about, right? I was talking about how, you know, in recent video I showed you Trump talking about some guy's hips, you know, just some guy's shoulders being broad and all these things. And then all the times at McDonald's, he was talking about the people being really good looking and beautiful and wow, you're so great looking and look at all these good looking people. He's obsessed with people's looks in a way that, you know, he's 80 years old. And just your body is no longer as important as it was, right? You realize your body deteriorates and your physicality, and certainly you can be good looking in a non, you know, good looking way. Like if you're a spiritual person, people can look at you when you're old and you're wrinkled and but there's like light in your eyes and you have this spiritual condition, you know, a true spiritual person, and you can radiate God's love and wisdom. And people want to be around you, and they're attracted to you in a, you know, non-sexual way. You know, attracted to you, just your presence and things, right? And you know, because you're radiating, you know, God's love from a higher source. You're getting ready to die yourself. And Trump is so immature; he's like a child, right? And he loves talking about, you know, people and a lot of times specifically men and how perfect specimens and checking out their bodies and, you know, just all this stuff, it's weird things, right? But this is the other piece to it here.
and you know they picked the best pilots in the Air Force, United States Air Force, to fly Air Force One. And I get up there, and I'm sitting, and I'm feeling my way up. You know, it's up high because 747, so you go through the stairs. But I sort of
So there are a couple of stories, like I mentioned him talking about Lincoln's bedroom. You know, Joe Rogan asked him what it was like to become president. He talks about going through the White House and it being kind of surreal and being in Lincoln's bedroom, and, you know, Lincoln had a dead son. He goes on forever about it. It's just a little bit interesting, but like everything with Trump, it's full of bullshit and things that, like, it's hearsay. You know, it's like Trump would, you know, he talked to somebody about anything. Like he could meet somebody on the street when he's campaigning, and the guy can tell him a story. And Trump, you know, will listen to people, and that person, you know, or a truther or any of these people, and Trump will just take it verbatim like it's fact. Like he's just one of those truther type people, you know, who, if he does reject the official story, he takes that next available story, like I said earlier in the video. And so then Trump talks about ISIS and getting rid of ISIS. And the reason the way he got rid of ISIS was the CIA could no longer run ISIS operations because they had to go through Trump, right? You know, like Joe Rogan asked Trump if there's levels to intelligence like the UFOs, and Trump said he's going to release JFK's, you know, his files like 3 days after he gets into the presidency. But they're not going to be any. There's going to be stuff they don't release, right? And that'll be whatever it is. But we was talking about aliens, and Joe Rogan asked him. And Joe Rogan is good at this. Like, he does good interviews. He's got skills, and he makes the things entertaining. He asks good questions. Like, not like he should call bullshit on Trump's shooting. There's stupid stuff that Joe Rogan's into, non-truther stuff or just goofy stuff. But he asked Trump if there's levels to the intelligence community that they kept hidden from him. And Trump, of course, doesn't answer the question because he wouldn't know, and he doesn't want to admit that or any of these things. But here he's talking about he goes to Iraq and nobody knows about it. And he gets on the plane and they turn off the lights to land, and the pilot lands the plane, without any lights. And Trump is, talking about how scary it is, right? Just that flight into Iraq, into this area that's, this kind of war zone area. And the generals meet with him. He goes, the real generals, because he's making fun of the generals that are on TV, the guys Milley and these other guys that have turned on him. But he's talking to these real generals, and they say they can get rid of ISIS, but the mainstream, generals and the former administration had never let them do it. And Trump didn't have to fly to Iraq to do this, right? And it's like a bullshit story. It's like typical Trump. But he made such a big deal about this flight, and you could tell he was like petrified the whole time he was on there, right? And he's not that guy. Like, he's not a guy who's going to put himself at risk, his life at risk for you. And so the whole story about the assassination attempt, which is clearly fake, in terms of the evidence, but also just who he is as a person, and it's like it is kind of it's some of it's comical, and sometimes Trump is clowning himself. A lot of times Trump is clowning himself. He doesn't even know. But people are buying into this bullshit. And that's fucking dangerous, right? A guy who, again, like being an outsider, politicians are corrupt. And the political process is corrupt. But if you want to get something done, you have to work the corrupt system. You just can't redo the system because it's a massive government. Joe Rogan was asking him about appointing 10,000 people on day one. Trump didn't know how to do any of it. Like, Trump didn't have like a real seasoned political team. And he just thought he knew better and he was going to do better because he's always, and I think it's just because he always gets bailed out. He's never really had to face any real consequences of his mistakes. He just, lies his way out of shit, right? Like a child would. He bullshits his way out of stuff. And, there's real consequences. I mean, obviously he doesn't have the power that people say, because if he had done it his way, he would have wrecked the government. Like, he hired all these people and the government sucks. There's nothing good about the government other than without it would be total chaos, right? It's a demonic system, but without that system, it'd be even worse, right? Like, that's all you can say about governments is they're holding the shit together, like, at least for now. And, Trump had to use these insiders, because if Trump did it his way, the thing would have just been wrecked, because Trump just wrecks stuff because he's a loser and a failure. All right, let's get on to the next piece here.
Exaggerated, they'll tell the story. They'll say Trump was a coward. So I'm sitting with him, he goes, 500 foot. And I'm telling you, there wasn't a light on the runway, nothing. And we're going in. You okay, Captain? Everything good? Yes, sir. No problem. We'll be down in about 1 minute, sir. And I'm telling you, Joe, there's always a light. There's not a little pin. And all of a sudden, psh, and you hear blah, blah, perfect landing like glass. That's how good. I mean, these guys, between the equipment and it's genius. It's pure.
Okay, so I stopped in the Fishboy thing. I didn't know I had two of these clips here from that story. But you'd hear where he says, they call Trump a coward. And, he, again, like, I'm not into the tough guy stuff. As you get older, I mean, there's just maybe always a little bit of that kind of thing. But as you get older, you become more and more risk averse. You see the pointlessness, not just in terms of daredevil shit, but like eating bad foods and making bad healthcare decisions and, not flossing, like things that you did when you were younger that you, maybe not regret, but you realize it was stupid. Maybe you regret it, but at least it was, just there's no reason to waste your life's energy that way. The wasting of one's life's energy. One of the great definitions of morality is the proper utilization of your resources. Morality is the proper utilization of your resources. And being conservative about the amount of, trees you're going to cut down, or the amount of, life's energy, in terms of pornography and, masturbation, any of these kind of things, right? Like there's the appropriate amount, and then the natural and appropriate amount of the proper use of your life's energy. How much you devoted into hatred, how much you devoted into, self-indulgence, watching sports, gambling, any of these things, right? Morality about you're given this opportunity to move forward spiritually, this gift of life. There's a reason for you being here and using your life's energy and not taking unnecessary risks. And so I don't, this whole tough guy thing and macho thing, I don't care about any of that shit, right? But the way that they're talking about Trump, and Trump is a warrior. I've seen these, pictures and posters of Trump being this muscle-bound, warrior, and he's none of those things, right? He's clearly somebody who's scared of a lot of things. And, he's, most of all, he's not somebody who's going to risk his life to save somebody else. Like he's the kind of person that would pull somebody in front of him to act like a shield, like a baby, or somebody, his wife, to stop the bullets. And so, which I don't care about. Like, I don't, I'm not judging him, like, in terms of that, but, like, what people are presenting him as or thinking of him as, it's amazing how people will delude themselves. That's what I'm talking about here. Self-delusionment.
Cartel, heads of the cartel, rich people, by the way, these are loaded. These people have so much money. They would call up, think of this, they call up the app, and the app tells them where they should take their load of illegal migrants from the Congo. We have a lot from the Congo, prisons in the Congo.
Okay, this is one of the most hilarious exchanges here because he's talking about immigration. This is his big issue, right? And Joe Rogan asked him about this app, and the app is, for the amount of illegal aliens they're allowing to get in, it's something to do with that, and it works some way. And Trump doesn't really know how to explain it or really doesn't understand the apps at all, right? And so let's go through this here.
Cartel, heads of the cartel, rich people, by the way, these are loaded. These people have so much money.
This is the first piece. Trump loves to talk about what people look like. Trump is a New Yorker, right? Like these superficial New Yorkers that love to talk about what people look like. One of those Real Housewives of Manhattan or whatever it is, right? And these New Yorkers who love to talk about what people look like and, more importantly, how much money they have. Because he's in that circle of people. And these people are loaded. These cartel members, boy, do they have money. Yeah, they're cartel. The cartel. So that's fucked up anyway. That's funny.
They would call up, think of this, they call up the app.
So I don't think that Trump has ever used an app before because you don't call up the app. The app isn't an operator, Like, let's listen to that again. You don't call up an app, right? I don't think I don't even know if Trump has a phone or,
They would call up, think of this, they call up the app, and the app tells them where they should take their load of illegal migrants from the Congo. We have a lot from the Congo, prisons in the Congo.
What the fuck are you talking about, bro? Why would the cartels have illegal immigrants from the Congo in Mexico coming through the southern border? I mean, yeah, from Guatemala, these other countries. I mean, why would the cartel be involved in that at all? I mean, they have these people that run these, the cartel makes money off of drugs. And if they're bringing people bringing in drugs in, they're not going to have people coming from the Congo. You know, they're going to have people who speak Spanish who are going to connect with the people who are buying the drugs on the other side of the border. Like, whatever the cartel would be using people, why would it be people from the Congo? Like, of all fucking places. Like, Trump just mashes all these things he hears together into something that just doesn't make sense at all, right? Like, it's like Joe Rogan doesn't call bullshit on pretty much anything Trump says here, which is great because, you know, he just lets Trump go. But Jesus Christ, Trump. The cartels in the Congo.
Or two strokes a hole or something. You know, it's a good handicapping sport.
Right.
But it gives me a little exercise. But I haven't played in a long time. I won 32 club championships.
Didn't you play right after you got shot?
No. What I did is I played with Bryson DeChambeau. Do you know Bryson?
Yes.
The pro.
Uh-huh.
He's a great player. And we played, it was a certain thing that we played, I guess called breaking 50 or something. 50, we play from a certain tee, and if you can break 50. And it got tremendous ratings. It was sort of like a crazy thing. He's a great guy.
But wasn't that like a
golfer.
couple of days after you got shot?
I don't know. I know I
think
haven't.
that was one of the funniest things. You were on the golf course.
I think I did, yeah, maybe I did.
The fuck? Right? You know, he doesn't remember playing golf because he had no wound. There was nothing there. There was no physical damage. Like, nothing happened. Like, he went out and played golf, and then he had the convention that was conveniently right after he got shot. So that was the centerpiece of the convention. They rolled out Kid Rock and frickin' Hulk Hogan and Dana White. They get in to start talking about Dana White. This was about healthcare and about physical health, and Joe Rogan saying, you're in good shape, and Trump talking about how it's genetics, and he just, all this stuff. But Trump says he doesn't like to exercise, like, he doesn't like to run, which is, I don't like that either. Like, I do much better if I play sports. And, if I'm, I knew as soon as I stopped playing basketball, I wouldn't be in good shape anymore. Because it's hard for me to exercise. I'm, like, doing better with it. But Trump had to go on a treadmill for stress test. And he had to walk and run a little bit. And he's like, the doctor was amazed. Like, he couldn't believe how good I was doing. And, it's always like that, right? He does that a little bit here. But, it just shows you how fake the shooting was, and just, like, he's just a bullshitter, which I appreciate. Like, I like bullshitters, right? My brother was a bullshitter. I'm a bullshitter to a certain extent. I don't dislike bullshitters. It's just that, you can't believe they're bullshit, right? Like, some of the bullshit's good, and some of it's entertaining. I mean, stand-up comedians are like that. And Trump's, a character. He's a good character. He was, and now he's kind of bitter, and he's lost it, and all of it. But you can't buy into it. You can't have faith in people like that are, constantly just, talking bullshit, right?
Will you do that to him to them if you win? It's the presidency has tremendous power. I could have put crooked Hillary.
I respected that you didn't, because what you said was it would be bad for the country.
No, I can't. I couldn't even imagine. You have, first of all, Secretary of State, but more importantly, the wife of the President of the United States of America.
Okay, so there's three parts to this because it's very telling. Joe Rogan points out how all the things the Democrats say that Trump is going to do to them, they're already doing, which I've said before. They accuse. This is something the Republicans did. This is Karl Rove. This is straight out of his playbook, turd blossom, as George W. Bush called him. You accuse the people of doing what you're doing. It's this has gone on for centuries. The people in the power accuse other people of, or the masses of doing to them what they're doing, what they're doing to the person, right? Somebody who's cheating, accusing someone else of cheating, right? Something like that. And they're accusing Trump of being a tyrant, and they're the ones who are into censorship. But Trump is also a tyrant. Like, Trump has these tendencies, and plus Trump just runs his mouth and says these things. But he's talking about how he saved Hillary, which was a breach of contract with his voters.
Going into jail. And if you ever saw, when I'd say something about her, they'd all say, I didn't say it. I never said it. They say, lock her up, lock her up. And I'd always go, take it easy, just relax. We're going to win this thing. Take it easy, take it easy.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
See, this is classic Donald Trump. I mean, this was a great moment in the debate, right? Hilarious moment. Probably my favorite moment from any debate, certainly from Trump's debates. I mean, it's one of the best moments, right? Kaboom. This is him delivering a line. And Joe Rogan actually talks about this earlier, about Trump's comedic timing. Joe Rogan says, you're actually like a stand-up comic. You have this comedic timing. You say hilarious stuff. And he's talking about this very moment, and Trump's saying, yeah, that was a great moment. And then later in the interview, like Trump, like he rearranges reality in such a way that he'll take credit for this great moment earlier in the video, in the interview, but later on deny the history and reality that he used to provoke his audience and agree with them about locking her up. And he talked about locking her up all the time. And then after he won, he said, they started yelling, chant, lock her up, lock her up. He said, yeah, that played well before the election. Because he was just saying that to get elected. Because he just lies and bullshits. He didn't give a shit about Hillary's crimes. He doesn't give a shit about he doesn't give a shit about Kamala, her issues, or any of these things. He just, like he said this when he was running against DeSantis, he said, people wondering why I'm criticizing DeSantis. Well, because he's the front runner. And if somebody else starts beating him, which was Nikki Haley, I'll go after that person. And then he'll make up the worst kind of slander and go down to the lowest kind of level and lie about the person and say, this sort of inflammatory things, these, over-the-top things. And then after, it serves its purpose, the lie, he forgets about it. And then he rearranges it. I think he actually believes his own bullshit, right, which is really dangerous. But clearly he provoked the lock her up, and he was a part of the lock her up movement until he wasn't, until it didn't suit him anymore, which meant he screwed over his followers. He lied to them. He misrepresented them, and they just never learned. They never fucking learned. I mean, they weren't even probably bummed by it.
And I'm telling you, I kept it down, just the opposite. Now they say, oh, Trump wanted to put her in jail. No, I saved her from going to jail. They had more stuff on her.
You saved her from going to jail? Now, he said this before, and I covered it the same way. But it's, this is even worse because of the Joe Rogan's just showing him and talking about I just showed you that moment, right? It's on video over and over again of him, encouraging his audience with the lock her up thing, the chant. He loved it, and he was part of it, right? But him saying he saved her from jail, what about all the single moms that have go to jail? No, but she was the president's wife. We couldn't embarrass the presidency. When did you ever give a shit about embarrassing the presidency? You've been an embarrassment to the presidency, which is my favorite thing about you, is that you've embarrassed the presidency and turned it into a joke because it is a joke, right? Just as Joe Biden has done it by being senile, and Bill Clinton did it by, banging an intern in his, the Oval Office. It's a joke. These people aren't great people. They're not great men and women. They're the worst people, working for the worst people. And, not the American people, because we're awful. We're also bad. We're all, like I said earlier in the video, the introduction. But, his belief in his own lies, right, and just changing things that we know because there's video evidence we lived through this motherfucker, right? And you're just going to come out and say you saved her from going to jail and think that's supposed to play? And the amazing thing about it is the people who want to lock Hillary up, the diehard Republicans, to hear him say he saved her, and still he'll lose no supporters because they're so fucking desperate, right?
Think that we have aliens coming, flying around or whatever.
What do you think?
There's no reason not to. I mean, there's no reason not to think that Mars and all these planets don't have life, because
Mars, we've had probes there and rovers, and I don't think there's any life there.
Well, maybe it's life that we don't know, but
maybe there was life there at one point in time. This is the speculation about Mars, that Mars had an atmosphere at one point in time, a long time ago, that could support life. It also had large bodies of water, but we've had no evidence of even bacterial life that exists on Mars. But the universe is pretty vast. It's not been a big thing
for me. I mean, when I looked at what China did to this, they would have never done it with me, where they put the balloon up.
Fuck. And so Trump talks about talking to people who tell him about, pilots and things. He's interviewed all these people and telling them about the whole thing, right? The UFOs. And if you had that kind of information, you'd want to know more and be curious about it. Trump says it's not my thing. Well, why wouldn't it be your thing? Like, the fact that we've been lied to about alien life, you wouldn't even, you have access to this information and you're hearing about it. And he talks about Mars, and then he just segue into Biden failing on the balloon, right? And he gets this defensive position, crosses his arms, and maybe they've told him, like, you can't say anything, who knows what this is. But him saying it's not my thing, if you had access to information about possible alien life, then it totally would be your thing, right? If it wasn't your thing before and you found out like shit about it, you'd be like, oh my God, this is like changes everything, right? It's one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing, right? And so it's just Trump being classic Trump.
Israel didn't follow his advice, and I think it was a very, the Middle East is rapidly changing. There are prophets that say the world will come to an end in the Middle East. You know that, right? And we have weapons today that are so scary. When you look, I rebuilt them all. And when you look at the weapons we have today, the biggest threat we have in the world today is nuclear weapons. And we have other weapons, too, that are devastating. But the nuclear weapons, the biggest threat we have in the world today, and that's what you...
So then he goes on to talk about how he tried to get a de-escalation with China and Russia. But you couldn't trust China because they'll say they're going to do something they don't. And he got into China about COVID. But, it's here. Like, this is happening. This is real. Like, this is your guy. He's probably going to be your president. He's totally fucked. His brain doesn't work the same way it used to, and it never was good. He's a liar and a flim-flam man. He's not a good leader. He's a failure. And he's, somebody who just... he's not even good at business, never mind any of this other shit, right? And he pretends he is, and he thinks he is, but he's not. And he thinks he makes right decisions, but he always makes the wrong ones. He's been successful, but only because he's able to bullshit people into giving them their money and his trust and their faith in him, right? And so the other person's Kamala, right?
Unbelievable. I rebuilt the military. I rebuilt our nuclear. And in a way, I hated to redo it, but I got to realize how powerful that nuclear is, Joe. One bomb, Israel is gone, but forget. One bomb could take out the entire East Coast.
Okay, I found it interesting you said Israel. He put Israel first, and then the East Coast, but then he brought Israel in at all, right? Because he's talking to an American audience who doesn't really know how big Israel is. And the East Coast of America is a lot bigger than Israel, right? And so, very telling. Okay, so let's end with this Haystacks Calhoun reference by Trump here.
Come into our country from places unknown, like sometimes they'll say about a fighter, from parts unknown, right? Remember Haystacks Calhoun, from parts, he says from parts unknown, the old days, those are the old days. That's even before you.
And so as I said before, well, first of all, Haystacks Calhoun was 600 pounds and 6'4". And so, Haystacks. And I don't know how long he was 600 pounds, right? I don't know what he was when he was younger, but he was always big. And he was mostly popular in the 50s and 60s. And so I grew up in 1964. I was, 6 years old by the 1970s. So he had some fights. They said he'd had a tag team fight with him and Andre the Giant and two Japanese fighter, Mr. Fuji and Tokahara. Remember these guys? I don't know if you guys were around my age. This is when I maybe liked wrestling a little bit. As the older I got, the worse it got for me, right? The less I thought it was good. But, this guy died in the 80s when I was in high school. And so I didn't watch wrestling at all when I was in high school. When I was a kid, and then later on, when I was in college, some of my friends were watching it, whatever. And so, the years I watched it, I was, before high school. And I hadn't probably thought of Haystacks Calhoun. I always thought that was a great name, Haystacks, right? And so, but I probably hadn't thought about him in 30 years. Like the name, I didn't even know I had that memory, right? Maybe when I was looking at the wrestling, it might have came back up or something. But I say it to my wife, and I forget why I said it to her. Trump is saying it because he's saying these immigrants were coming in from parts unknown, like the fighters, and they remembered Haystacks Calhoun, who would have been kind of before Joe Rogan's time. I think Joe Rogan's my age, too. But anyways, it means that, like, there's, the ether, where thoughts come from, right? Because people think they have their own thoughts, but I know from experience and from the teaching of Sajmark system that a lot of what we think and a lot of our creative process involves, certainly our souls are involved, so that's something, that's beyond our physical apparatus of our minds, right? But there's stuff that floats in the ether. There's a great TED Talk by that writer, Elizabeth, whatever her last name is, who wrote the book Eat, Pray, Love. And she talked about inspiration, and she talked about this poet who the poems would come to her, like they would blow through her like a wind. And one time, like a poem went, like if she didn't grab onto it, it would float off and go to somebody else. Like it was that kind of, her experience with the creative process. And one time she grabbed the poem, like I don't know, what this meant, but this was her story. And the poem was, she grabbed it but pulled it in backwards, so she wrote the thing backwards and had to reverse all the letters. And so, I know what people say about that in terms of inversion. But, there's the idea of a genius, it was like an etheric being. It was like you had an etheric being, like you were channeling something. And to my knowledge, all the great sort of creative expression books and movies and, things that people do have some connection, inventions. Like it comes from the etheric world, right? There's things that are downloaded, uploaded, time from benevolent beings, sometimes from, evil etheric beings or whatever, what people would call demons. But there's a lot of this stuff that's a free flow of information. And, there's a connectivity here. And so, like, I've experienced this over and over again. And, it always makes me feel like these things are just meant to happen. And that's why they're happening, because they're meant to, right? It's part of a plan. The difference between believing in God or believing in nothing, not believing in God, is that if there's a God, there's a plan. There's order to the universe. There's a reason for all this. If there's a soul, then there's a reason, or you have a purpose as a soul. And like I said in one of my recent videos, very few people will find their purpose, will find their soul's purpose or even look for it. But anyways, I want to get into a little bit about Kamala here. Wrap this video up. It's already pretty long. This video is supposed to be about, this thing went mostly about Trump, but I'm just going to show you a little bit of the Kamala stuff. But what it's really about is, these people are not great people. And you would need a great person and even if they were a great person, you need a lot of great people, right? You wouldn't have just a great president and all the rest of the Congress and Senate are pieces of shit. Like even Trump said, if you run as an independent, which was an interesting point, one of the smart things that Trump said, he was talking about RFK Jr. Trump looked into running as an independent. He said, even if you did really well and you won, you wouldn't have the House or the Senate, right? With a parliament, they have multiple parties. And when the parties get into power, they have majority, they have the party in power, but they still have, multiple parties, so they don't have a majority. They have to work with other parties. There has to be compromises, right? I know there's a party called Labor, like there's a green thing, I don't know. So the Tories, I don't know what they have, whatever they have over there, right? And they have this parliamentary process. But in America, it's always going to be a two-party system because the two parties are never going to give up power. And you would need a massive, you'd have to win not only the presidency, but you have to win a lot of the Senate seats and a lot of the House seats. And then you would have to make bargains and deals because if there's a three-party system, there wouldn't be a majority to pass laws and do all the things that you need to do. I mean, the system is so that there's, with the two parties, you need a majority, right? And, people, they're always going to be compromised. And so, you would need a lot of great people to come in to, be honestly fix the problem. But if you had a lot of great people, they tell you, guess what? You can't fix this thing. And then, there'd be chaos because people would lose their fucking minds. But, only after the internet got turned off they're going to lose their minds because their their lifestyle is going to be interrupted. And whenever that happens, and whether that's to do with war or some other calamity, and maybe people will be so freaked out and beat down that they'll be pacified. I mean, we're going to see how this all plays out. But either way, neither of these two dopes are going to save you. And let's take a look at dope 2. We've just seen dope 1. Here's dope 2, Kamala Harris. Okay, so Kamala Harris is doing her own little fish girl thing here. She's copying Trump a lot, apparently. She's copying his tax plan to not tax tips and some of these other things. They've run out of ideas. And they're getting desperate. But this is a place where she starts talking like she's a pastor. I talked about how Obama grew up first in Hawaii, then in Indonesia, then went to high school in Hawaii. And he never lived in the South, and he lived in mostly areas with Hawaiian, Asian, and, American people who, didn't speak with some sort of a Southern black pastor type of accent. But he just, appropriated that for his character that he created. Kamala Harris, and he's good, though he could do it. Obama could he could play a role as a pastor in some, cheap Lifetime movie or something, right? Like he could pull it off. But Kamala can't. Listen to her.
Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. The path may seem hard, the work may seem heavy, but joy cometh in the morning, and church morning is on its way.
Wow, that's bad, right? I like to see the whole thing, but, there's that. It's just she's so bad at everything. She's just not a good politician. All right, so I should say this. My mother is Irish and German, and my father is Albanian and Sicilian. And I would never go to any of those countries or people and pretend to be connected to my culture, right? My grandfather and all my relatives, my dad's grandmother, my dad's mother and father spoke with a heavy accent, but everyone else had an American accent, right? And my mom, certainly, my dad talked a little bit about his Sicilian, his Italian part of him, and it's like a little bit of the heritage, but not really all that much. My mom went to Ireland, and my grandmother was an orphan that came to America from Ireland. I'm not sure exactly that whole story, but I'm not running away from my heritage. And I'm a little bit connected to it, but in a way where I would never pretend, like I would never have an Irish accent or Italian accent, and go to people who are Italian and, act Italian or act German or any of these things, right? Like we share heritage, but I clearly am not that person, right? I don't know enough about my heritage and I didn't grow up with it. There's things that I just wouldn't fake it, right? Just to please a crowd. I might tell people I have that heritage if I was, talking to somebody who's Irish or German or any of these things, Sicilian, Albanian. I know the least about the Albanian people. I worked in a restaurant where there was a guy who, the chef was Albanian and his sous chef or whatever it was, his assistant chef was also Albanian. And they told me a little bit about the country, right? But, I wouldn't try to pass as that. Like, I'm clearly American, right? This is my ethnic heritage. And for Kamala Harris, she's Indian and Jamaican. And her mom was a, Brahmin Indian and that's who her major influence is. But there's not enough Indian people in America to make much of a difference. It's like 1 or 2% of the population. And they usually live in places where she's going to do well in the election. And they'll probably just vote for her, although a lot of the Indians are conservative and Republicans. And so, they might vote for her, they might not, who knows. But she's not going after that demographic. She's going after the African-American demographic. And lots of African-American people, especially African-American men, don't buy her bullshit, right? Because she says she grew up with a nanny, in a daycare who taught her about black culture. But she lived in the elitist part of, Berkeley, California, near San Francisco, near the area of Oakland. Those two places are, right next to each other. And she grew up in a college town. And then she moved to Canada, went to high school, right? And then she eventually went to, historically black college. But only after, living a life that wasn't what she's pretending to be here. And she's clearly faking it. She fakes everything. Like she doesn't pull any of this shit off, right?
Vice President, we thank you so much for coming and being with us to have this conversation inside the barbershop.
Indeed, that's where all the truth gets spoken. That's where the news gets shared.
And
that's where all the truth gets told and the news gets shared, right? And she's trying to pull this off. She's done this before, and then she says it here.
This is kind of breaking the code. We got you in the barbershop, It's a little private, but
not my first time.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Not my first time in a barber shop. Where the knee pads?
we got you in here today.
And so she just sucks at it all. Like this part of her job is the easiest part and most important, where she has to develop a persona, a character. And it's either got to be genuine and sincere, or it has to be something that appears to be genuine and sincere. And she doesn't pull either off, right? She can't be herself because she's unlikable, and they've told her not to be herself. And whatever character they're trying to create here, I read that earlier in the video about her friend, and, they have all these stories. But the bragging and it's just so remedial. It's so obviously fake. Like it's all WWE. Like it's so obviously contrived and fake. And people just are so low consciousness, they accept it, right? But she's doing poorly. If she loses this election, it's because she didn't win she didn't get enough votes from men, and particularly black men, and she's not going to perform as well as Obama and Biden did in the African American community. She's going to lose or win this thing. And if she loses, certainly that means that the African American community isn't with her on all these things. So much so that this is what Obama had to say on it.
If you're a Muslim American and you're upset about what's happening in the Middle East, why would you put your faith in somebody who passed a Muslim ban and repeatedly suggested that somehow you...
See, the Muslims are very upset when the Palestinians, with the way Biden has handled Israel, and they maybe understand or don't understand that Trump is worse. RFK Jr. is even worse than Trump. They're more pro-Israel. But they have Obama basically pleading with people to vote their identity, right? This is identity politics.
You weren't part of our American community. If you're an African American or Latino, if you're from Puerto
Latino, like the way he said it, right? Latino, it was.
And you see somebody whose values seem to indicate that you're not part of their equation. How do you think it's okay? How can you tell yourself it's okay as long as our side wins? If you're a Muslim...
he's pleading with, this is the identity politics, where everyone's supposed to vote their demographics. But what Joe Rogan rightly pointed out, especially with the youth, where the young people and lots of people are tired of the fake shit. That's why Trump appeals to them. They know that Trump's a piece of shit. They know, it's WWE. I mean, they're okay with it. or maybe they're just too stupid or whatever. It doesn't matter. Low consciousness. But at least Trump is authentic. And that's a step in the right direction. Now, it's not worth voting for him because we have to go through the whole Trump thing. And either way, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't know which one. It's like, which one's worse? I'm certainly not voting. None of it matters to me. Like, there's going to be an outcome, and it's going to be, then there's going to be other outcomes. And none of them are about saving or fixing America. Trump has basically said that, in this interview with Joe Rogan. He's made it clear, without making it clear, that there's just no way to save it, right? The political structure, the politicians, the powers that be, that own and buy politicians. Like, he's saying it without saying it, that neither one can save you, right? But the good thing about Trump, and, it's only a slight thing because, he's a horrible person, is at least he's not pretending to be something else. I mean, he does pretend, but he does it in such a transparent way. He's pretending, right? Like, he lies and he fakes stuff, but he's not, that's who he is, right? He is being who he is. He's authentic. And these other guys like Obama with his accents and his, politically correct stuff and, this whole identity politics, what people who are voting in this situation, one of the big reasons they'd vote for Trump is Kamala's so fake and she's not a real person. If she loses this election, it's because of that, because she couldn't connect with people. So Kamala she's in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Is that where, Michigan? And she gets heckled here, and it's by, I think, Democrats who are upset about the war.
We are fighting for America's future, and we understand the opportunity we have before us.
No more war, stop the war. So the majority of protesters, I've been traveling, and I've gone through a lot of places that are Republican areas, and there's not a lot of enthusiasm for Trump. Not as much as there used to be. There's not as many signs on people's, lawns. There's not as many bumper stickers. I haven't been through so many liberal areas, but I've seen a few things for Kamala, but Tim Walz in some of these areas. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of enthusiasm. Like, people aren't willing to put Trump, on their lawn. I've seen, a lot more in the other two elections. Places that I've traveled through before. I live in a Republican state. And so there isn't the enthusiasm or the overt show of enthusiasm for Trump, but there's virtually no enthusiasm for Kamala. And any enthusiasm is manufactured, right? And the hardcore liberals, they're having problems with this war thing. So much so that they're willing to elect Trump, who's going to be even worse and hand Israel even more in terms of, even if they don't vote for him, they're basically, their lack of support for Kamala is going to cost her the election.
Us to turn the page on the fear.
He called her a piece of shit. Well, and she's having trouble dealing with it. She can't navigate things. She's not good on her feet. She's not good at dealing with, unpredicted circumstances. And they've probably got her so lacking in confidence. And I'll show you in my next video about Dougie Fresh talking about her laugh. That she doesn't know how to handle things because she can't be herself. And that's why she's failing. So there's been a lot of celebrities. I don't know what's going on. That's Kelly Rowland in that weird outfit. There's been a lot of celebrities. So two of the members of Destiny's Child showed up in Houston. Kamala Harris has zero chance in Texas. She's not going to win there. But they want to show her with a lot of these celebrities because she's definitely floundering. They don't want her to be the face of this thing anymore. There's more videos about Obama. Obama's doing more campaign for her than he did for Joe Biden. Like, he wasn't doing very much at all for Biden. But they've rolled him out quite a bit here. And he's more of the face of her bid for election than, she is. And then all the celebrity bullshit, right? Woo! Woo! Who is this couple? It's Kelly. So Kelly Rowland decided to wear a suit, and I don't know who that is. Give them a smooch. Breaking news: Harris rallies with Beyonce in Texas in a dead heat race. They don't even mention Kelly Rowland here.
Welcome, everybody.
Woo! Woo!
Welcome to my Houston family. I am so proud to be here back in Houston with my Mama T and my sister. Welcome to this
Welcome.
day, this remarkable, this joyous day.
It's so joyous. It's pretty joyous out there. So joyous you put on a fat guy suit. Like, why wear that, right? Like, you know.
A date, a day, a time, a moment with weight and meaning for our country, for our people, and for the world. A moment, Houston, where we grab back the pen from those who are trying to write an American story of division and hatred.
No way. Who's that? Who's that? Woo, boo, boo.
A moment.
Freedom.
When we grab back the pen from those who are trying to write an American story of misogyny and racism.
Boom. Who's that? They're speaking of Donald J. Trump's.
We are grabbing back the pen from those who are trying to write an American story that would deny the right for women to make our own decisions about our bodies.
Our body, exactly. We get to make our own body choices. And then Beyonce comes up here. Woo! They love Beyonce more. Go back.
So do what you do and do this thing again.
It must suck for Kelly Rowland that Beyonce gets such a bigger.
H-Town.
Beyonce is really stupid. Like, when she talks, you're like, oh my God, I think she's really stupid.
We are so happy to be standing here on this stage as proud country Texas women.
Texas women.
The one and only Vice President Kamala Harris.
Can you do another country album? Because that was great.
A woman who's been pushing for what this country really needs right now.
What?
Unity.
Unity. Oh, yeah.
It's impossible not to feel the energy in this room.
Exactly. So much unity in here.
Positivity.
I feel the unity.
The community.
We feel
the
your
humanity.
unit.
We are at the precipice of an incredible shift.
Are
The
we?
brink of history.
No way. A big shift is coming.
I'm
This is
not
going
here
to take
as
a big,
celebrity.
giant shift out of America.
I'm not here as a politician. I'm
Are
here
you?
as a mother.
A mother. And a sister.
A mother who cares
And a
deeply
daughter.
about the world my children and all of our children live in.
Woo.
A world where we have the freedom to control our bodies.
Exactly. Control our bodies.
A world where
We
we're
can
not
kill
divided.
fetuses.
Our past, our present, our future
All three.
merge to meet us here.
Exactly. Kamala's going to do that.
Imagine our daughters growing up seeing what's possible with no ceilings, no limitations.
Exactly. Zero ceiling.
Imagine our grandmothers. Imagine what they feel right now.
Imagine our sons growing up with no testicles. Because of the ceiling that we have. The price of the ceiling is their testicles.
Those who have lived to see this historic day.
Woo!
Even those who are no longer physically with us.
Okay, let's wrap this thing up here.
A quest, a calling, an anthem. Our moment right now. It's time for America to sing a new song.
That song is Kamala Harris.
Our voices sing a chorus of unity. They sing a song of dignity
Look at the guys snapping up here.
and opportunity. Are y'all ready to add your voice to the new American song? Because I am. So So let's do this, ladies
Let's do this, you guys. Let's do this.
and gentlemen. Please give a big, loud Texas welcome to the next President of the United States, Vice President Kamala Harris.
So here's they're playing that freedom song. Remember, that's what she came out to. Here she comes. Woo! Woo! Kamala, woo! There you go. See, they have to bring in these rock stars to bring in the enthusiasm. Look at her. Oh, I can't believe these people are that psyched to see me. People started walking out, the ones that thought there was going to be like a concert and shit. But like, here they go. Here we go. This is the freedom song that they used at the... I don't want to get copyrighted. But here they are. This is Beyonce's freedom song. They didn't have anything from Destiny's Child. Kelly Rowland's kind of on their way out. You know, she's just wearing a big suit. There you go. Boom. There you go. Give them a big applause. See, they're trying to get enthusiasm at her rallies.
Kelly and Beyonce!
Woo! Kelly Beyonce! No way. She's so excited. She's so starstruck. So this is, you know, everything you need to know. This is how bad it's gotten. Okay, so, you know, neither of these two people, like I said, is great or even good. I mean, not necessarily great or good people, but just capable of excellence, right? Capable of mastery. And even if they were, like I said before, which Trump has admitted, the system's so corrupt and without the support of other great people, there would be no way to turn this thing around. But even if there was all great people, you can't turn around what's a bad system. You know, fundamentally, it's built on evil. You know, its foundation's built on anti-God, you know, going away from God's will type of stuff. And so, you know, this election, I mean, I don't care if people vote or not. I'm not going to talk anybody out of voting because nothing makes a difference, right? And if voting mattered, you know, they wouldn't let you do it. That's a famous bumper sticker saying. And so people want to do it. They want to hope for something. What difference does it make, right? Not everybody's going to make it through the apocalypse, right? Not everyone's going to be allowed. I mean, some people, there's like a giant like cutting process, you know, a culling process, right, where you cull your herd, you know, where there's going to be population reduction. And so, you know, the things are going to unfold and they're not. Like, you know, I hope they don't, but I'm almost positive they will, you know, based on everything that I know. And when they do, it's out of our control, right? You know, Haystacks Calhoun forever. Remember Haystacks. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Romano, definitely pointing for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.